Chapter 2254. The voices continued to come from the room. What? That brat dares to have designs on our little Hatchie. Sanson snorted with laughter. Who doesn't know that our little Hatchie has always been surrounded by flowers and leaves? What is he thinking? Yen Qing's eyebrows twitched. Chu Liuyue's tone was light. Little Hatchie is beautiful and is the center of attention wherever she goes. There are many people who like her, so there's nothing strange about it. Master, what did little Hatchie say? What else can she say? That Liang he is all right in other aspects, but his appearance is a little average. Little Hatchie doesn't like him. TSK. She has such high standards. I reckon that few people can catch her eye. Sigh, Master, that Liang he didn't do anything overboard, right? There are too many perverts these days. What if he can't get what he likes and does something to little Hatchie? Yen Qing lowered her eyes as a cold glint flashed across her eyes. With Xin Yi and the others around, how could they let little Hatchie be bullied? Little Hatchie, on the other hand, made him run away in anger with just a few words. Sanson, aw. What did she say? Chu Liuyue's voice carried a hint of laughter. She didn't say much. She just said that she already has someone she likes. If Liang he insists, she can consider taking him in as a concubine. Yen Qing looked up slightly, her eyes clear and cold. Pft, Tang Ku, who was drinking tea to calm herself down, couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of tea. Su Li's eyes were bright as she sighed gently. Can it be like this? Little Hatchie is indeed different. Before Chu Liyue could say anything, Sanson said affirmatively. What's wrong with that? With little Hatchie's personality, she's really capable of doing something like that. 3-3. Chu Liyue dragged out the word. Master, I'm telling the truth. Little Hatchie had said this before, and Big Brother was very supportive of it. If you don't believe me, you can ask Big Brother. Chu Liyue said. There's no need for that. She didn't want to discuss this with Xin Yi yet. Yen Qing held her breath and suppressed the waves in her heart. She raised her hand and knocked on the door. Tuk tuk. Come in. Chu Liyue said as he looked at the door. Only a few people would come at this time. The door opened, and a handsome and cold face appeared in her line of sight. The corners of her lips curled up. Just as she had expected. Yen Qing, why are you here? Yen Qing made a fish salute. Your Highness, you have guests. Guest? Chu Liyue was stunned. Who is it? Swoosh. The sound of a bone fan opening could be heard. Then, a familiar figure walked out from behind Yen Qing. It was a young man who looked to be in his late 20s. He wore a long indigo robe with a white jade belt around his waist, outlining his tall and slender figure. He was handsome, and his facial features were impeccable. In particular, he had a pair of blue eyes. They were as clear and clean as ice, and they glowed with a faint cold light. There was a careless smile on his lips, and his eyes were flirtatious. Your Highness, long time no see. Jian Fengqi. Chu Liyue was pleasantly surprised. She hadn't seen Jian Fengqi in a long time. However, Jian Fengqi didn't seem to have changed much from before, but the aura around him was much stronger than before. Clearly, he had also broken through to the great god level. Didn't you go to Lingxiao College? Why are you here? Jian Fengqi sighed. Although the college is good, Your Highness isn't here. There's no point in staying here. Chu Liyue laughed. It had been so long, but a certain someone was still as flirtatious as before. It seems that I should be glad that the senior and junior sisters of Lingxiao College didn't suffer from your scourge. Jian Fengqi clicked his tongue. Your Highness, you've wronged me. After I went to the college, I was really focused on cultivation. I didn't even leave the house much. Seeing how serious he was, Chu Liuyue's interest was piqued. Oh. Jian Fengqi smiled slightly proudly. To tell you the truth, Your Highness, I've already broken through to the level of a master doctor. When can we spar again? Sure, Chu Liyue said calmly. I just broke through to the level of a master doctor, and I'm looking for someone to spar with. Jian Fengqi stumbled, and the smile on his face froze. He looked at her in horror. Master doctor. Didn't you say you're a master doctor? He had already done his research before coming here. Chu Liyue nodded. Yes, I was indeed a master doctor before. Didn't I say that I just broke through? Jian Fengqi, there was nothing more shocking than this. God knew how much he had suffered in order to catch up with her. He had read countless medical books in Lingxiao College and tried countless times. There were a few times when he was almost forced to steal herbs from the Medicine Wind Valley, and he was almost caught and beaten by the elders. In the end, this was it. He had worked so hard to break through to the level of a master doctor, and was just about to spar with Chu Liyue, but in the blink of an eye, she became a master doctor. Jian Fengqi felt his heart ache. He clutched his heart and took a few steps back. Just forget what I said just now. No, just forget that I was here at all. As he spoke, he turned to leave. He couldn't stay here any longer. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly remembered something and stopped in his tracks. Chu Liyue looked at him with a half-smile. Why did you stop? Jian Fengqi opened his bone fan and covered half of his face, only revealing his blue eyes, which glowed brightly. By the way, Your Highness, is Hongyu with you? Chu Liyue shook her head. No. Previously, Mu Hongyu had been in the Yuntian Tower. After taking down Peach Blossom Dock, Chu Liyue thought that she would return, but she didn't. Later, she returned to the Yuntian Tower with Rong Xiu and found out that Mu Hongyu was in seclusion and hadn't come out for a long time. She didn't disturb her. She should still be in the Yuntian Tower. Why, are you looking for her? Jian Fengqi's eyes twitched. Your Highness, have you forgotten something? Her contract is still with me. She ran away all of a sudden. Who wouldn't look for her? Chu Liyue looked at him with a half-smile. Why are you in such a hurry to look for her? You've never been short of servants anyway. Moreover, Snapper wouldn't be able to do such a thing. After all, Mu Hongyu was a princess. Although she couldn't be compared to Jian Fengqi, who was the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain, she had been doted on since she was young. Besides, she was lively and carefree. Now that she was focused on cultivation, she wouldn't care about these things. Jian Fengqi's hands trembled slightly. Your Highness, even if you're on her side, isn't this too much? I've been refining medicine with you for so many years. Can't you be biased towards me? Chu Liyue said, Oh. Then. I'll give you the money, and you'll give me the contract. Jian Fengqi immediately took a step back. No way. Chapter 2255. What's wrong with that? If you really don't want the money, I'll give it to you. Or give you a few times more. Anyway, money was the last thing she needed now. Jian Fengqi tightened his grip on the fan in his hand. I just can't. Chu Liyue leaned back in his chair leisurely. I told you to relax and let her be, but you didn't want to. I told you to buy Hongyu's contract, but you didn't want to either. Then what do you want to do? Jian Fengqi, you're so hard to please. No wonder Hongyu ran away. She glanced at Jian Fengqi. I heard that you've been looking for Hongyu for a long time. If you have the time and energy, why don't you do something else? Jian Fengqi snorted softly. Your Highness, you know best how I treat her. She has never been wronged by me. Anyway, he had to find her. Chu Luiyue suddenly said, Hongyu. Jian Fengqi was stunned. What? Chu Luiyue pointed behind him. Jian Fengqi turned around. Outside the courtyard, ripples suddenly appeared in the void. Following that, a figure fell out from it and crashed headfirst into a stone pillar nearby. Bang! Ouch, it hurts. Mu Hongyu held her head and gasped. She had been very careful, but she still hit it. Jian Fengqi was stunned. There was only one sentence left in his mind. What does it mean to search high and low only to find it by chance? Isn't this what it means? As soon as he thought of this, he subconsciously walked over. Mu Hongyu fell to the ground and rubbed her forehead. Just as she got up, she suddenly sensed someone approaching from behind. Without thinking, she threw a punch. Jian Fengqi reacted quickly and immediately dodged. At the same time, he grabbed her wrist and raised his eyebrows. Yo, we haven't seen each other in so long, and you're giving me a greeting gift. Mu Hongyu was shocked. She quickly turned around and her almond-shaped eyes widened. Jian Fengqi. Why are you here? Looking at her shocked face, Jian Fengqi ground his teeth. This young master is waiting for you here. Looking at his fierce look, Mu Hongyu shrunk her neck guiltily. Jian Fengqi originally wanted to hold her down and teach her a lesson, but when he saw the bump on her forehead, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Mu Hongyu waited for a long time. She thought that he was going to make a move, but he did nothing. What happened to your injury? Jian Fengqi asked, trying to suppress the fire. Mu Hongyu was at a loss. What injury? Seeing that Jian Fengqi's eyes were burning with anger again, she came back to her senses and pointed to her forehead. Oh, you mean this? I hit that rock just now. Jian Fengqi took a deep breath. If it weren't for his good self-control, he would have pried open her brain to see what was inside. How old are you? How can you get this kind of injury? Mu Hongyu was a little embarrassed. I've been trying to break through recently, and I accidentally lost control. Jian Fengqi was stunned. Chu Luiyue had already walked over. Hongyu. Seeing Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu felt as if she had seen her savior. Luiyue. I finally see you. Chu Luiyue glanced at Jian Fengqi. Jian Fengqi snorted in his heart, but he still let go of her. Mu Hongyu walked up to Chu Luiyue in a few steps. Luiyue, I have something important to tell you. Chu Luiyue looked at her anxious expression and felt a little strange. What's wrong? Tell me slowly. Mu Hongyu asked nervously. Did something happen to Master? Digression, this is February, when Kavinke is bald, and every word is like a blunt knife being sharpened. Speaking of which, I feel that the comments section is really full of spoilers. Of course, the current speculation is not the ending of February, ha 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 ha. Chapter 2256. The master that Mu Hongyu was referring to was Diwu Zhangze. Chu Liuyue's heart sank. Why do you ask? Mu Hongyu furrowed her brows. I encountered some problems in my cultivation, so I wanted to go back to the Red Moon Desert to find Master. However, when I got there, I found that it was completely sealed off by a crimson barrier, and I couldn't get close at all. I tried many ways, but I couldn't get in, so I came back to find you. The Red Moon Desert had undergone a huge change, so the people inside were probably in danger. Also, I was able to contact Master before, but it's completely cut off now. This was what Mu Hongyu was most worried about. Diwu Zhangze treated her very well, and he wouldn't have done that if he hadn't encountered something. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. It's a long story, but Senior Diwu and the others are indeed no longer in the Red Moon Desert. She raised her hand and pointed at the silver bridge that hung in the distant sky. Now, they're all there. Mu Hongyu had been in seclusion for a long time, so she didn't know much about what was happening outside. After listening to Chu Liuyue's explanation, she finally understood. In other words, Master and the others are now imprisoned in the illusory god palace. Mu Hongyu murmured in shock. Chu Liuyue's eyes flashed with hesitation. Dugu Mabao was now trapped in the illusory god palace, so there was no mistake about it. However, Diwu Zhangze was most likely suppressed under that strange and dangerous sea. As for Lan Xiao, there was no news at all, so she wasn't sure. But in the end, she didn't say this. Everything was unknown, so it was better to be cautious. Then, Lu Yu, I'll go with you this time. Mu Hongyu grabbed her hand. Coincidentally, I've recently broken through, so I should be qualified to go in, right? Chu Liyue was a little stunned. You've broken through. Mu Hongyu's aura was still that of an exalted god, not a venerable god. I'm not talking about the cultivation of martial artists. I'm talking about my void body. Speaking of this, Mu Hongyu was very happy. Originally, I went to look for Master because I was stuck there and couldn't break through. But I didn't expect that I would stumble upon the right path and successfully break through. Really? Chu Liyue did not know much about the physique of the void. After all, in the entire Divine Ruins world, not many cultivators with the physique of the void had appeared in the past 1,000 years. Diwu Zhangze was an exception. Mu Hongyu nodded. Lu Yu, do you know where I came from this time? Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely guessed something. Mirror Lake. Mu Hongyu didn't wait for her to guess. She couldn't wait to say the answer. Her eyes were shining with excitement. Chu Liyue was shocked. You directly crossed the sky curtain. Yes. Mu Hongyu nodded vigorously. Because I just broke through, and this is also my first time trying, there are still many areas that are not perfect. In the end, I couldn't control it well, so I was injured. However, I should be fine after practicing a few more times. As soon as she finished speaking, everyone present fell into deep shock. The sky curtain fell from the sky to distinguish the inside and outside of the Divine Ruins world. Other than the Gate Realm, cultivators could not pass through any other way. But now, Mu Hongyu actually said that she came directly. This meant that she no longer needed to rely on the Gate Realm to freely enter and exit the Divine Ruins world. Chu Liyue suddenly remembered that a new Gate Realm had appeared some time ago, and it had attracted countless families and clans in the Divine Ruins world to compete for it. But now, compared to Mu Hongyu, what was there to compete for? It was hard to imagine how powerful Mu Hongyu's control of space had become. Seeing that Chu Liyue did not speak for a long time, Mu Hongyu spoke again. Lu Yu, don't worry. Although I can only go in and out by myself now, after a long time, I will be able to bring others with me when I increase my strength. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and gave Mu Hongyu a thumbs up. Hongyu, you are really amazing. No wonder Diwu Zhangze was so happy to accept Mu Hongyu as his disciple when he heard that she had the body of the void. This kind of constitution. How could the word talent be enough to describe it? Even she, who was now a god and whose strength surpassed many cultivators who were also gods, did not dare to hope that she could ignore the Gate Realm and enter and exit the sky curtain freely. At the side, Jian Fengqi's lips twitched harshly, and the carefree attitude he had when he first came was completely gone. He only felt that he was very miserable now. It was fine that he could not defeat Chu Liyue. After all, he had not won much in all these years. But the point was, how did Mu Hongyu ascend directly? With this kind of insane strength, who knew how many people would be jealous of her? He recalled that he had pulled her aside and almost criticized her. Jian Fengqi felt a headache coming on. Why were the people around Chu Liyue all so insane? There were so many insane people, but why was he not one of them? As if sensing his sad gaze, Chu Luiyue turned around. Jian Fengqi, what did you just say? You want to take Hongyu away? She smiled faintly. With the current situation, can you take her away? No wonder Jian Fengqi could not keep up with Mu Hongyu for such a long time. With Mu Hongyu's ability to control space at will, how could Jian Fengqi be her opponent? Swoosh! Jian Fengqi opened his fan and fanned himself. Mu Hongyu asked, "Are you feeling hot?" Jian Fengqi replied, "No, but I want to be alone." He wanted to turn around and leave even more than before. However, this person was right there, and he really could not move. Therefore, he could only stand there and suffer. Chu Luiyue looked at his rare frustrated expression and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. In fact, Jian Fengqi's talent as a celestial physician was definitely better than many people. Otherwise, she would not have agreed to his challenges time and time again when they were in Tianling. Although Jian Fengqi always lost, he did not lose by too much each time. This was very rare. Moreover, at his age, he was able to become a master physician. Even in the Consonance Academy, he was definitely outstanding to be able to do so. Even if he was compared to the geniuses of the first-rate families in the Divine Ruins, he would not lose at all. However, what was more unfortunate was that he was comparing himself to her and Mu Hongyu. Needless to say, Mu Hongyu had the body of the void, and there might not even be one in a million people. Those who could successfully cultivate to this level were even rarer. It was no wonder that he was so hurt. However, as long as he was given time, he would continue to improve in the end. Chu Luiyue even secretly felt that Jian Fengqi's talent as a celestial physician was not inferior to Liang He's. Thinking of this, she said, "Jian Fengqi, come with us." Chapter 2257. Jian Fengqi snapped out of his daze. Where to? Illusion God Palace. Chu Luiyue nodded. Yes. Jian Fengqi's expression flickered. He had witnessed the opening of the Illusion God Palace's heavenly gate. It would be a lie if he said he didn't want to go. Besides, Mu Hongyu would obviously go as well. He nodded without any hesitation. Okay. Chu Luiyue sized him up and smiled. There are plenty of herbs on Illusion God Palace's herb mountain, enough for you to use. You can take this opportunity to become a supreme doctor as soon as possible. It won't be too late to compete with me then. Jian Fengqi's chest tightened at the mention of this. He couldn't afford to offend her. Just like that, Chu Luiyue decided to go with them. She looked at Yan Qing. Yan Qing, is your master still at Yuntian Tower? Counting the time, it has been about a month. I wonder if Rongxiu's matters have been settled. Yan Qing paused. Before she could say anything, a strange fluctuation came from afar. Chu Luiyue looked back and saw a man slowly walking toward her from the sky. He was wearing snow-white clothes, a tall figure, and a handsome face. It was Rongxiu. He came from the horizon. He looked like he was taking a stroll, but his speed was extremely fast. The spacious space seemed to shrink under his feet. He covered 100 miles with a single step. In the blink of an eye, he was already above the Yumanor. He was heading toward Chu Luiyue. Before the crowd could even see his movements clearly, he was already right in front of them. What a crowd! Rongxiu's gaze quickly swept across the people in the courtyard. His thin, scarlet lips curved. Looks like I came at the right time. Chu Luiyue stepped forward and sized him up carefully. After making sure that he was fine, she let out a sigh of relief. During this period of time, the entire Divine Ruins world was in constant turmoil. The incomplete and mysterious black divine body had already turned several places upside down, including the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix clan. She couldn't help but worry. While Rongxiu was away, she had been worried that the Yuntian Tower would be a target. Fortunately, looking at calmly Xiu's state, everything seemed to be fine. Are you worried about me? Rongxiu raised his eyebrows. Chu Luiyue shook her head, then nodded. Rongxiu was very strong. Even until now, she had yet to find out his true abilities. Logically, she knew that she did not need to worry about Rongxiu. It was just that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, so they missed each other. What's more, now that the heavenly gates of the illusory god palace had opened, the entire divine ruins world was in an extremely unstable state. Suddenly, her eyes narrowed. Rongxiu, your strength seems to have increased a lot. Although Rongxiu didn't deliberately show it, she could still feel it when she stood close to him. Rongxiu laughed. Isn't this normal? As a cultivator, as long as he continued to absorb the energy of heaven and earth and convert it into his own divine power, he would naturally be able to increase his strength. Chu Luiyue still felt that it was a little strange. But this change didn't seem to be a small one. How long had it been since the last time he left? Rongxiu smiled and let her size him up. After a while, Chu Luiyue could only sigh helplessly. Forget it, there's always someone better. Every time she thought that her strength had improved and that she could compete with Rongxiu, she would find that he had also improved. Even if he didn't seem to spend much time on cultivation, he would always be able to leave her in the dust. The two of them had known each other for many years. She should have been used to it. Is everything okay at the Yuntian Tower? She changed the topic. Rongxiu shook his head. It's fine. Chu Luiyue was relieved and smiled. That's great. Come with us to the Yuntian Palace. Hearing this, Rongxiu's deep phoenix eyes seemed to flash with a dark light. Yan Qing, who was standing next to him, also immediately looked over. Tang Ke put his hands behind his back, coughed, and looked at the sky. After a while, Rongxiu asked. You want me to go with you? Chu Luiyue nodded. Yes. I came back this time to ask Mr. Su for help. On the other hand, I wanted to see how you were doing. Since you're done, then, isn't it just right to go with me? With Rongxiu's bloodline and talent, ascending to the heavens and becoming a god was almost within reach. Seeing that Rongxiu didn't immediately agree, Chu Luiyue was a bit confused. You don't want to go? Countless cultivators in the world yearned for the Yuntian Palace. Why did it seem that he didn't care about Rongxiu? After a while, Rongxiu said. Okay. I'll go with you. Deep in the Thunder Pool, forbidden area. Yi Zhao's eyes were closed and his breath was weak. Only the sound of the collisions in the Tianlei reminded him where he was at the moment. Ever since he was trapped here, he couldn't see the sun. Every minute and every second was extremely unbearable. He almost couldn't remember how long he had spent here. Yi Zhao. Mu Dongyu's voice came from the front. Yi Zhao didn't move, as if he didn't hear it. Mu Dongyu didn't mind. He knew that Yi Zhao could hear everything. Even if he was half dead, he was still the clan leader of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. His vitality was extremely tenacious. You still refuse to surrender? Mu Dongyu questioned. Do you know that you're just asking for trouble? If you were half as smart as Yigong, you wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Hearing Yigong's name, Yi Zhao finally opened his eyes slowly. That pair of eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life and were suffused with the color of blood were filled with undisguised anger at being betrayed. He deserves to die. Yi Zhao spoke with difficulty. His voice was rough and hoarse. If not for him, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan wouldn't have been defeated so quickly. As for him, he wouldn't be locked up here without any preparation at all. Mu Dongyu looked at him condescendingly. I know that to you, Yi Gong betrayed you, betrayed the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. But have you ever thought that maybe, he's right? 10,000 years have passed. The current palace of the illusory god has changed. Yi Zhao, if you really care about the lives of the hundreds of clansmen of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan, you should lower your head and make the choice you should. Mu Dongyu was actually quite patient. Ever since Yi Zhao was trapped here, he had held similar negotiations several times. What's the point of holding on like this? Yi Zhao sneered. Yi Gong is already one of your people. Why are you so obsessed with me? Mu Dongyu's mouth twitched. He's only opened his 6th meridian. Naturally, he can't be compared to you. Yi Zhao closed his eyes and didn't say anything else. Seeing that his attitude was still firm, Mu Dongyu finally changed the topic. I heard that the young master of your clan has the purest bloodline. Yi Zhao's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 2258. Yi Zhao clenched his fists tightly. Mu Dongyu continued. Pure bloodline. This is the same as the ancestor of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. In time, she will definitely be able to break through the 9th meridian. Yi Zhao, if you can persuade her to surrender, I promise that your Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan's past crimes will be forgiven. Even if it's not for yourself, you have to think about your clansmen, right? How long do you think you can seal them in the Phoenix God Mountain? The bloodline power in your body is almost depleted. After a while, the barrier will collapse on its own without us doing anything. At that time, won't the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan still be in trouble? Mu Dongyu stared at Yi Zhao. After a long time, Yi Zhao finally sneered. His voice was cold and sarcastic. When has the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan ever committed any crimes? You know best in your hearts who is in the wrong. Mu Dongyu's face darkened. He warned in a deep voice. Yi Zhao. However, Yi Zhao didn't seem to hear the anger and warning in his words. Or perhaps, he didn't care at all. The choice made by our ancestor is also the choice made by our entire clan. Mu Dongyu, there are some things that you can do that our Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan will never do. I advise you to save your energy. Don't waste your breath on this useless nonsense. No matter how hard you try, no matter how many times you repeat it, my answer will never change. Any more words will only make me feel that you are more ridiculous. Mu Dongyu's expression was cold as he waved his hand. Whoosh, the black chains wrapped around Yi Zhao began to tremble violently, emitting ice-cold clanging sounds. Yi Zhao's body shuddered. He was trembling slightly due to the intense pain. A stream of faint reddish-gold blood slowly flowed out from the wound on his wrist and spread along the chain. The thick smell of blood gradually spread out. The surrounding golden Tianlei seemed to have sensed something and became restless. Mu Dongyu snorted, and they gradually calmed down. Then, a ball of blood the size of a longan gradually condensed in front of Mu Dongyu. Within the ball of blood, there was a wisp of pure gold that flickered with a faint light. Mu Dongyu glanced at it and frowned. Although Yi Zhao was the clan leader and had opened his 7th meridian, he had been trapped here for so long that no matter how much bloodline power he had, there would come a time when he would be exhausted. Compared to the initial situation, the bloodline power in this blood mass was much more diluted. It was not even 1/5 of the original. Yi Zhao let out a soft chuckle. If you really have the ability, just kill me. Stubborn. Gritting her teeth, Mu Dongyu put away the ball of blood and turned to leave. This Yi Zhao was indeed a tough nut to crack. It had been so long, but they still couldn't persuade him. They didn't even show any signs of relenting. As for Yi Gong, although he was obedient, he was a traitor and couldn't be put in an important position. If Yi Gong had opened his 7th meridian, he could be considered. Unfortunately, Mu Dongyu walked forward. Wherever he passed, the surrounding Tianlei quickly made way. After a while, he came to a certain place and suddenly stopped. He turned his head to look. A man was standing not far away, holding a hammer in his hand and knocking on a reef from time to time. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Mu Dongyu was already in a bad mood. Hearing this sound, she became even more irritated. "Who is it?" she shouted in a deep voice. Mitsui was originally focused on investigating the situation inside the reef and didn't notice someone approaching. Hearing the sound, he suddenly woke up and looked back. "You are..." Mitsui's eyes quickly scanned the other party and suddenly understood. "The fourth divine envoy." Mu Dongyu frowned. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Mitsui cupped his fists. "I'm Mitsui. I'm here today to use the power of Tianlei here to temper my divine body." Mu Dongyu stared at him suspiciously. His appearance just now was indeed a little strange. Mitsui looked up and asked tentatively. "May I ask, fourth divine envoy, can I not come here?" He had already heard from his master that the depths of the lightning pool was a forbidden area and was not to be casually approached. Therefore, he only stayed at the edge of the pool. There shouldn't be anything wrong with that, right? Mu Dongyu didn't say anything. She looked at him coldly. "Or, did I do something wrong just now?" Although Mitsui was usually bold and boorish, he was very cautious. Otherwise, Tsun-Yi wouldn't have specially chosen him to stay in the mystic forest. After a moment of silence, Mu Dongyu said, "It's nothing." Actually, many people entered the lightning pool. There were all kinds of people. It wasn't that he hadn't seen them before. What Mitsui had done was nothing compared to what many people had done. It was just that he happened to be in a bad mood. Seeing Mitsui's serious and honest expression, the doubts in Mu Dongyu's heart gradually disappeared. She moved and went into the distance. Mitsui watched her leave until she was out of sight. Then, he slowly let out a sigh. Soon after, he turned back to look at the rugged reefs with some doubt. TSK. This fourth divine envoy doesn't seem to know the secret here. Didn't he say that he was in charge of the lightning pool? He didn't even know this. Mitsui scratched his head. He vaguely felt that something was wrong. On the other side, little Hachi was fiddling with medicine in her room. A rich medicinal fragrance wafted out of the room, almost filling the entire courtyard. Hua Shuangshuang and Tsun-Yi were sitting opposite each other in the courtyard. Noticing the commotion, Hua Shuangshuang looked in that direction strangely. "Big brother, what's wrong with little Hachi? Why is she so diligent in her cultivation these days?" Ever since her master left, she had been hugging countless medicinal herbs and plunging into her room. She hadn't come out until now. With little Hachi's personality, this was really strange. Tsun-Yi's expression was indifferent. He didn't even lift his eyelids. Master has already broken through to senior doctor, but she's still a senior doctor. It doesn't sound good if word gets out. Little Hachi usually seemed lively, but when it came to important matters, she was still clear-headed. Now that she was about to be left far behind, she naturally worked hard. Hua Shuangshuang immediately understood. No wonder. Suddenly, the cry of a magical beast came from afar. Hua Shuangshuang looked up and saw a golden-winged crow-bone beast flying over. It looked like an eagle or a vulture. Its entire body was black, except for a pair of dark golden wings. Under the sunlight, they shone faintly. Hua Shuangshuang focused her eyes and saw that there was a tear on its wing. Blood was flowing out, and even the white bone could be seen. Its eyes were filled with deep fear. Behind it, a half-folded condor was rapidly approaching. Chapter 2259. From the looks of it, the two divine beasts had just engaged in a fierce battle. The golden-winged raven-bone beast was no match for it and fled. However, the half-folded divine vulture, which had the upper hand, refused to let it go and chased after it. The two divine beasts were actually of the same level. But for some reason, the half-folded divine vulture was exceptionally ferocious and emitted a dense, cold aura. Its indifferent and ferocious eyes flickered with a bloodthirsty light, as well as a hint of mockery. Its speed was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Every time the golden-winged raven-bone beast felt that it was about to successfully escape, it would suddenly speed up, but when it was about to catch up, it would slow down again. There were many times when the golden-winged raven-bone beast wanted to give up, but the other party would give it a glimmer of hope, causing it to flee with all its might. But it was also very clear that it couldn't escape the other party's pursuit. After running for so long, it had always been within the other party's hunting range. This caused the golden-winged raven-bone beast's mental state to become tense and on the verge of collapse. Seeing this scene, Hua Shuang frowned and a trace of disgust flashed across her face. The half-folded divine vulture is doing this on purpose. The weak are prey to the strong. This was a principle that everyone understood. Among the magical beasts, this was even more vividly reflected. However, the half-folded divine vulture was toying with an opponent that had already been defeated by its claws. It was truly vile. He stood up, curled two fingers on his right hand, placed them in his mouth, and blew a whistle. Hearing this melodious and resonant whistle, the golden-winged raven-bone beast subconsciously looked over. Then, without any hesitation, it flew straight towards Hua Shuang. Although it was currently injured, it had already been forced to the brink of collapse by the half-folded divine vulture. At this moment, it was using all of its remaining strength. There was even a thin layer of black flames burning on the dark golden wings. Hua Shuang raised her arm, and the golden-winged raven-bone beast fell head first towards her. Screech! It let out a low, mournful cry. Its aura was already extremely weak, and it relied on its last bit of willpower to grab onto Hua Shuang's arm. Hua Shuang lowered her eyes and glanced at it, her brows furrowed even more tightly. She took out a pill with her other hand and fed it. Without even looking at it, the golden-winged raven-bone beast directly swallowed it. If anyone else saw this scene, they would definitely feel extremely shocked. Demonic beasts were vigilant by nature and were naturally hostile to humans. This was especially true for divine beasts, who were alert. They would not easily trust humans. However, at this moment, this golden-winged crow-bone beast directly flew over to Hua Shuang's side, and without the slightest hesitation, ate the food he gave it. It didn't seem to be worried that Hua Shuang would take the opportunity to harm it. Instead, it trusted her with its life. This was truly strange. A dark and cold murderous intent flashed across the eyes of the half-broken vulture when it saw this. Just as it was about to continue forward, Tsinise suddenly looked up. His face was calm, and his narrow and indifferent eyes were as deep as the sea, making him unfathomable. An indescribable invisible pressure surged out of his body. The half-broken god vulture finally stopped when it noticed danger, and then a strand of deep fear and terror had inexplicably surged from the bottom of its heart. This place must not be approached. However, it was really unwilling to give up on the food that was already in its mouth. In order to take down this golden-winged skeletal beast, it had spent a great deal of effort. But now, it was all for naught. It paced back and forth outside the courtyard, unwilling to approach, but also unwilling to leave. Hua Shuang glanced at the golden-winged crow-bone beast lying on his arm. When he sensed that its aura was gradually stabilizing, his expression relaxed slightly. Then, he looked at Tsinise. "Big brother, I really don't like this half-broken god vulture," Tsinise said indifferently. "This is something from Junjuqing. It's normal that you don't like it." Hua Shuang was stunned. He turned around to take a look, and only then did he understand. I see. I knew there were many different types of energy mixed within its body. He had heard of Jun Juqing's name before. This person didn't have a contract with any magical beasts, but he kept many of them by his side. Moreover, he liked to let them fight and kill each other. Only the strongest one would become his favorite. However, this was usually a short period of time. Once a better one appeared, he would immediately switch to another. The reason why this half-broken god vulture's energy was mixed was because it had devoured too many different types of magical beasts. Of course, there might also be humans among them. Wait, why is Jun Juqing's divine beast here? Xin Yi's expression didn't change. Of course, it's because he's here too. He's here. Hua Shuang was about to say something when he suddenly saw a figure slowly walking toward them. I was wondering why you didn't come back after so long. So you came here. A lazy and evil voice sounded. It was Jun Juqing. Hearing this voice, the half-broken god vulture's eyes suddenly flashed with deep fear. It had been with Jun Juqing for a long time, so it could naturally hear the dense impatience and annoyance in his voice. It folded its wings and lowered its head slightly. Jun Juqing didn't even look at it. Instead, his eyes fell on Xin Yi. Their eyes met. At this moment, even the surrounding air seemed to have frozen. But after a while, Jun Juqing shifted his gaze and looked at Hua Shuang and the golden-winged crow-bone beast on his arm. This was originally a little toy sent by the second divine envoy, but it seems that you are very interested in it. Since that's the case, I'll give it to you as a gift. Hua Shuang frowned. Why did Jun Juqing's words sound like he had a close relationship with the second divine envoy? Based on her previous experience, these divine envoys were all extremely arrogant. But now, they were treating Jun Juqing so politely. A divine beast was given away just like that. Who didn't know that this was to be fed to his half-broken god vulture? Even if the golden-winged crow-bone beast couldn't be compared to the two ancient divine beasts, it was still a respectable existence among the divine beasts. She really didn't know what the second divine envoy was thinking. Oh right, I heard that she went back. Jun Juqing sighed softly as his slender fingers brushed past his eyebrows. Seems like she went back to invite the artifact refining saint over. Probably to enter the palace of the illusory god. Actually, I said before that I could bring her in, but unfortunately, she wasn't willing. She just had to go through so much trouble. Hua Shuang snorted. What does what my master wants to do have to do with you? Patriarch Yi, you should focus more on yourself. Jun Juqing's gaze turned even colder, but his lips still held a smile and his sword-like eyebrows raised slightly. I just think that she's too stupid to seek something far away. Family Yi. Xin Yi suddenly stood up. Chapter 2260. The smile on Jun Juqing's face finally faded. He stared at Xin Yi for a while, then turned to leave without saying anything. The half-folded divine vulture quickly followed. Seeing their figures gradually disappear into the distance, Hua Shuang frowned and looked at Xin Yi. Big brother, who exactly is that Jun Juqing? He seems to be quite familiar with these divine envoys. This kind of treatment was much better than what they had received. Xin Yi said, of course it's Family Yi's head. Hua Shuang suddenly understood something. You mean, Family Yi, boom. A powerful energy wave suddenly came from the room. The two of them turned to look. Bang! The door was violently opened by this shocking force, and a thick cloud of white smoke spread out from inside. Immediately after, little Hachi hurriedly ran out. Cough cough, cough, cough cough. As little Hachi ran, she kept waving her hands, trying to disperse the smoke. When she finally reached the center of the courtyard, she was finally able to catch her breath. That scared me to death. Little Hachi supported herself on the stone table with one hand and patted her chest with the other. Little Hachi, what's wrong? Hua Shuang had just taken a step forward when Little Hachi happened to raise her head, and his heart jumped in fright. For some reason, Little Hachi's face was smeared with several streaks of black ash. Her eyes were filled with tears from the smoke, and she looked extremely pathetic. Hua Shuang's mouth twitched. Little Hachi, what did you do? Are you going to tear down the room? Little Hachi shook her head pitifully. What? I just wanted to see if I could refine a Supreme Doctor level pill, and I accidentally ended up like this, Hua Shuang sighed. You can't rush this kind of thing. You've always been very talented. Take it slow, and you'll succeed, Little Hachi shook her head. Second brother, you misunderstood. I've already refined it. As she spoke, she took out a tattered box. It's just that the medicinal pill contained too much power. My medicinal cauldron couldn't withstand it and exploded just like that. Even this box was blown apart. Her heart ached. This is a jade box that I chose after looking at it for a full 6 hours. It was originally used to store the first senior doctor level pill that I refined. Who knew that something like this would happen? Heavens knew that when that medicinal cauldron exploded, her little heart was really thumping wildly. Hua Shuang opened her eyes wide. She looked at the jade box and didn't say anything for a long time. Xin Yi, on the other hand, reached out to take the item and opened it for a look. Although the jade box was shattered, the medicinal pills inside were still in good condition. White and green intertwined. Although the colors were a little mixed, the power was still considered pure. Most importantly, this was indeed a senior doctor level pill. This also meant that Little Hachi had officially broken through to Supreme Doctor. Just put up with it. Xin Yi took a few glances and returned the item to Little Hachi. I'll get you a better medicinal cauldron later. There won't be a next time. Hua Shuang looked at him as if she was looking at a pervert. Little Hachi had broken through to Supreme Doctor so quickly. If this was outside, who knew how many people would be envious of her? Why did it become putting up with it when it came to Big Brother? Little Hachi seemed to have already expected his answer. She weakly exhaled and put the jade box away. I know. But Big Brother, it won't be too late to say these words after I go to sleep. In order to refine this pill, she hadn't slept for several days and nights. Now that she had finally succeeded, she only wanted to take a comfortable bath and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights, all right? With that, she turned around and walked away. Hua Shuang looked at her sympathetically. Do you plan to raise this golden-winged crow-bone beast yourself or send it back? Xin Yi asked. Hua Shuang returned to her senses and looked down. The golden-winged crow-bone beast seemed to be afraid of being abandoned. Its body trembled slightly. Hua Shuang sighed. I'll raise it. On the other side, Jun Jiuqing had just passed through the gate of the Illusion God Palace when he stopped. The half-folded divine vulture that had been following him also stopped. Jun Jiuqing said, Come here. The half-folded divine vulture obeyed and arrived in front of him. Sensing the cold aura emanating from Jun Jiuqing's body, a deep sense of fear welled up in its heart. It's just a golden-winged crow-bone beast, yet you wasted so much time. There was no emotion in his voice, only a bone-chilling coldness. An extreme sense of danger welled up in its heart. The half-folded divine vulture's eyes suddenly widened. It spread its wings and turned around to flee. However, before it could move, a silver streak of light flew out, bang. Its head instantly exploded. A cluster of flames ignited and quickly swallowed the corpse. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The half-folded divine vulture died just like that. Not even its bones remained. It was just a bit playful. You killed it so straightforwardly. Aren't you a bit too heartless? A gentle male voice sounded. Jun Juqing looked up. The person who came was a young man in his 20s. It's just a half-folded divine vulture. What's there to pity? Jun Juqing laughed. It's not a crimson gold heavenly phoenix or a great phoenix dragon. In my opinion, the second divine envoy doesn't need to care. Yu Qian raised an eyebrow. You can't say that. The divine beasts of the Illusion God Palace are all extremely precious. It's naturally a pity that it died just like that. Jun Juqing's lips curled slightly. He didn't think much of it. If Yu Qian really cared, he wouldn't have reacted like this. Yu Qian said. I'm here to ask you something. Jun Juqing nodded. Second divine envoy, please speak. Yu Qian took a step forward. I heard that Shengguan Yu has two contracted divine beasts. One is the three-eyed divine eagle, and the other is the current young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan. Jun Juqing's eyebrows moved slightly. Why are you asking this, second divine envoy? You just have to say yes or no. Yu Qian smiled faintly. Elsewhere in the Illusion God Palace, Jin Yunlai was organizing the roster in his room when he suddenly heard footsteps. He looked up and saw that it was Xu Jing. He frowned slightly. Ever since Xu Jing was reprimanded in public, she hadn't shown her face much. Even when she returned to the Illusion God Palace, she always came and went in a hurry. Why are you here? He closed the roster and put away the crimson gold feather in his hand. Xu Jing's eyes swept across the roster and didn't stop. I'm here this time because I have something to ask. What is it? Xu Jing paused. She looked hesitant. After a while, she took a few steps forward and stood in front of Jin Yunlai. She asked softly, have you seen the first divine envoy recently? Jin Yunlai frowned. You went to see him. Xu Jing bit her lip. He refused to see me. Chapter 2261. Jin Yunlai leaned back in her chair. Isn't this normal? Everyone would think so. Why are you looking for him at this time? Of course, he won't meet you. Xu Jing frowned. Of course, I know that. However, I suddenly remembered something. The first oracle hasn't shown up for several years. All this time, many of the affairs in the illusory god palace have been handled by the second oracle. Don't you think this is a bit strange? Jin Yunlai frowned. What's so strange about this? The first oracle's most important duty is always to be loyal to the illusory god palace. Isn't it normal to leave those messy little things to the subordinates to handle? Do you think everyone is like you, wanting to control all the power in their own hands? These words were very harsh, and Xu Jing's face became very ugly. However, Jin Yunlai's status was higher than hers, and she was telling the truth. She was in no position to refute. She took a deep breath and suppressed her anger. It's normal, but now that the divine gate has opened, the first oracle hasn't appeared. This doesn't make sense. She raised her chin. I just want to ask you. Have you sent this list to the first oracle? Jin Yunlai narrowed her eyes. The first oracle has already said that these matters are left to the second oracle. He doesn't care about other things and doesn't care too much. However, this list is of great importance, and he doesn't even look at it. He didn't even ask about it once. The room fell into a short silence. Jin Yunlai slowly sat up straight. What are you trying to say? Xu Jing said, it's not that I want to say anything. I just feel that this matter is strange. In addition, some time ago, the sixth oracle returned. I heard that his physical body was completely destroyed, and even his divine body fell along with it. He is now in seclusion to recover. He is very scheming. Who could have caused him to suffer such a big loss? Jin Yunlai didn't say anything. The relationship between the oracles of the illusory god palace wasn't very close. Most of the time, they just performed their own duties. Sometimes, they might not even see each other once in a few years. He had been in contact with Xu Jing for a long time. Xu Jing lowered his voice, and there seemed to be a light flickering in his eyes. I know that the sixth divine emissary was ordered to leave, and this time, he returned with permission. However, according to the rumors, the first divine envoy actually left the illusory god palace a few years ago and only returned recently. Rumors. Jin Yunlai sneered. There's no evidence for this kind of thing, so it's best not to talk about it. Moreover, this matter was related to the first oracle, so he had to be careful with his words and actions. Xu Jing, don't blame me for not reminding you. Don't stretch your hands so far. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Xu Jing was not reconciled. But, if you really want to know, why don't you ask the first oracle again? This way, the truth would be revealed. What other rumor could be more credible than the explanation of the person involved? Or, you can go and consult the second divine emissary. In short, I won't stop you. But he wouldn't get involved. Xu Jing gritted his teeth when he saw his firm attitude. Roar! Suddenly, a roar came from outside the door. The two of them were shocked and turned their heads to look. Jin Yunlai got up, walked over, and opened the window. A muscular white lion was leaping over. Its ice-blue eyes were looking straight at them. They were cold, indifferent, and extremely sharp. When it saw the two of them, it licked its paws, and a trace of mockery flashed in its eyes. However, when the two people in the room saw it, they were both shocked and looked at each other. Why did the Emperor's demonic beast suddenly come here? Then what they said just now, Xu Jing clenched his fists nervously, and his lips turned pale. This white lion rarely came here. Why did it suddenly appear today? She opened her mouth and was about to explain. Roar! Before she could say anything, the white lion had already retracted its gaze, turned around, and leaped away quickly. Its speed was extremely fast, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Jin Yunlai suddenly thought of something and turned around. Where did it come from just now? Xu Jing was stunned. I didn't notice. What's wrong? Jin Yunlai slowly clenched his fists. If I'm not wrong, it seems to have come from the direction of the first oracle's residence. How is that possible? Xu Jing instinctively retorted. It's not easy to get close to the first oracle's residence. Moreover, it hasn't opened its door for several years. Even I was stopped outside previously. How could it have come from there? Jin Yunlai lowered his eyes slightly. This was his territory. He wouldn't be wrong. There was only the first oracle in that direction. It must have come from there. But why did it go there? Maybe I was wrong. Jin Yunlai closed the window. You'd better go back. Let's forget about the first oracle. If you really want to know, you know who to ask. With that, he sat back in his seat and made a gesture of sending him off. Xu Jing bit his lip and finally left. At this moment, Chu Luiyue and the others had arrived at the sea again. This time, there were more people with them. In addition to Su Li and Rong Xiu, who they had initially planned to invite, there were also Mu Hongyu, Jian Fengqi, and Yan Qing. Even Tang Ku, who had said that she had something to do at the beginning, had come along. When they arrived, there were many more people standing on the shore than when Chu Luiyue left. Ever since the Divine Gate opened, the experts in the Divine Ruins world had come here. When Chu Luiyue arrived with Xin Yi and the others, they were the first batch. And now, with the passage of time, more and more people naturally came. Because of the previous experience, Chu Luiyue and the others went much more smoothly this time. Other than Mu Hongyu, Jian Fengqi, and Su Li, who were still exalted gods, the others were already venerable gods. And Su Li herself was a weapon-refining saint. If she wanted to pass through this sea, she had plenty of divine artifacts. Mu Hongyu was even more so. She could even pass through the sky canopy freely, so this was naturally not a problem. So, in the end, the only one left was Jian Fengqi. Looking at the rolling waves in front of him, he grabbed Mu Hongyu's wrist without hesitation. Mu Hongyu looked up at him. Jian Fengqi coughed. "Take me there, and I'll return the contract to you." Mu Hongyu was still a little hesitant at first, but when she heard this, she immediately agreed without hesitation. "Deal." Chu Luiyue looked at him suspiciously. Based on her understanding of Jian Fengqi, he didn't seem like a straightforward person. Suddenly, a warm and strong hand reached over and held her hand. Let's go." Rong Xiu looked up at the silver bridge calmly and raised his eyebrows slightly. "I hope everything goes well." Digression, it was about 7:00. Chapter 2262. Sensing the movement of the divine gate, Jin Yunlai stood up and walked outside. However, as soon as he reached the door, he felt that something was wrong. In the courtyard, the void shook. Ripples spread out, and a figure gradually appeared. Seventh Divine Envoy. Seeing who it was, Jin Yunlai was shocked. "Lord Yumo. Why are you here?" This person usually followed the emperor and rarely showed himself. He also rarely came to the palace of the illusory god. Why was he so free today? Yumo's gaze fell on the register in his hand. The emperor wants to see this divine enrollment register. Jin Yunlai was shocked. Now? Yumo raised his eyebrows. "Why, can't I see it?" "Of course not." Jin Yunlai immediately denied. However, he still felt that the emperor's sudden request was quite strange. This divine enrollment register was considered an item of the palace of the illusory god. The emperor would only look at it once every 1,000 years. After thinking about it carefully, the emperor had indeed not looked at it for a long time. However, this was the first time he had asked for it when the divine enrollment register opened. However, some people have already reached the divine enrollment register. "I still have to register them, Seventh Divine Envoy." Yumo interrupted him with a smile. "The emperor is in such a good mood today. You should know what is more important." Jin Yunlai's heart skipped a beat. He no longer hesitated and presented the register with both hands. "Lord Yumo is right. The divine enrollment register is here. Please take a look." Yumo raised his hand. The divine enrollment register and the reddish gold feather flew lightly and landed in his palm. "Seventh Divine Envoy, if you are really worried, I can also help you register those people at the divine enrollment register. Then, I will bring the divine enrollment register back and present it to the emperor." Jin Yunlai was a little hesitant. "I'm afraid it will be troublesome, it's just writing a few names." "What's so troublesome about it?" "It will be over in a while." "Or does the Seventh Divine Envoy not believe me?" "I don't dare." Jin Yunlai lowered his head slightly. "In that case, I will leave the divine enrollment register to you for the time being." Yumo revealed a satisfied look on his face. "Then the seventh divine emissary should rest for the time being. After the celestial emperor has finished reading it, I will naturally send it back." Jin Yunlai responded. Yumo's figure flashed and quickly disappeared from the spot. Only then did Jin Yunlai raise her head, a trace of doubt flashing through her eyes. Of all times to enter the divine book, why did it have to be now? He thought for a moment and looked in the direction of the divine gate. Naturally, he couldn't see anything clearly from here. However, he was in charge of guarding the divine gate this time, so he could sense the barrier over there. Not long after, a familiar fluctuation came from that direction. "Shengguanyu," he muttered under his breath. "You came back pretty quickly." She reckoned that the person with her was the weapon-refining saint she had invited earlier. From the looks of it, there seemed to be a few more. He probably brought his subordinates or someone he was familiar with. Anyway, this was not the first time she had done something like this. Jin Yunlai frowned. After a moment, she retracted her gaze, shook her head, and turned back into the house. There was nothing much to see. At the Divine Gate, Chu Luiyue directly crossed the barrier and entered the Divine Gate. Rong Xiao followed closely behind. Just as he approached the barrier, there was a ripple on it. Buzz! It faintly emitted a suppressive aura, blocking people outside. He stopped and withdrew his hand. Chu Luiyue saw this and didn't find it strange. She explained, "It's probably because you haven't been here before, so you were stopped. Later, the 7th Divine Envoy will come and register you." As she spoke, she turned back and glanced in the direction of the star path. Strange, Jin Yunlai used to come very quickly. Why was she nowhere to be seen this time? Rong Xiao gently nodded. "Then let's wait." Su Li and the others also nodded. Since they were already here, there was nothing to be anxious about. At this moment, Chu Luiyue felt a fluctuation behind her. She focused her gaze. A blurry figure appeared in front of her. In the fluctuating void, a man's voice could be heard. "The 7th Divine Envoy can't come for now. I will be responsible for your registration." When she saw the silhouette of the figure, Chu Luiyue had already guessed the person's identity. Now that she heard the voice, she was even more certain. This person was the man who appeared at Herb Mountain that day. In other words, he was the person who was rumored to be by the Emperor's side. Just as she was about to speak, the man had already raised his hand. Whoosh! A reddish-gold feather flew from his hand and went straight to Rong Xiao's forehead. It gently swept across his forehead. The totem of the Yuntian Tower quickly appeared. The man asked for his name and opened the barrier. Rong Xiao lifted his foot and stepped through the Divine Gate. Chu Luiyue blinked. That was too fast. However, Rong Xiao had a bloodline totem to begin with. It was not strange that he could enter smoothly. The people behind him followed one after another. Jian Fengqi, Mu Hongyu, and Su Li did not have a bloodline totem. Chu Luiyue originally thought that this person would make things difficult for them. However, he only sent out a few letters without saying anything and directly let them in. In less than a quarter of an hour, all of them had entered the Heaven Gate. Chu Luiyue felt that it was a bit strange. She looked at the man again. Unfortunately, the man's figure and appearance were blurred in a halo. She could not see clearly. Clap. The sound of the register being closed could be heard. Some of you know the rules of the Illusory God Palace, so I won't say anything more. Then, the man's figure quickly disappeared. Jian Fengqi looked at Chu Luiyue. This Illusory God Palace doesn't seem that hard to enter. Mu Hongyu stretched out her hand. Give me the contract. Chapter 2263. Jian Fengqi's peach blossom-shaped eyes sparkled. With a wave of his slender fingers, a piece of paper appeared at his fingertips. Why are you in such a hurry? I've always kept my promises. I won't go back on my words. Mu Hongyu took the piece of paper and looked at it carefully. Suddenly, she froze. There's something wrong with this contract. Why isn't there my handprint on it? At first glance, there was nothing wrong with the contract, but the most important thing was that her handprint was missing. Jian Fengqi waved his fan. Oh, this one. I copied it when I was bored. Of course, it doesn't have your handprint. Mu Hongyu. What did you say? She gritted her teeth and stared at Jian Fengqi with her almond-shaped eyes. Jian Fengqi took a step back. Ahem. I only said that I was giving you the contract, but I didn't say which one. Mu Hongyu raised her voice. Of course I want the real one. Why did he give her a fake one? Jian Fengqi looked innocent. But you didn't say so just now. Everyone, they had seen shameless people before, but it was rare to see someone this shameless. Chu Luiyue was full of admiration and emotion. After so many years, Jian Fengqi, you're still the best. He was the only one who could do something like this. Oh, no, there was someone here who could compete with him. Tang Ku. Without saying anything, she put the tombstones together. Now, the entire Peach Blossom Dock, no, the entire world of divine ruins, knew that they had been buried together for 10,000 years. Su Li tried to explain and clarify several times, but it was useless. In the end, she could only let it go. What were all of them thinking? Mu Hongyu suddenly had an ominous feeling. How many copies of this do you have? Jian Fengqi smiled, his eyes flirtatious. I haven't counted. Every time I think of this, I will copy 1, 2, 3, 4 copies. If you really want it, I can write it for you now. Jian Feng. It's too late. Mu Hongyu clenched her fists, ready to fight. Sigh, Jian Fengqi closed his fan. Hongyu, it's not appropriate to fight here, right? This was the Palace of Illusions. Especially when they were still at the entrance of the Divine Gate. Chu Luiyue coughed. Hongyu, don't worry, we're here, there will be opportunities in the future, Jian Fengqi. Mu's anger. Humph. Little you, didn't you say that the person in charge of guarding the Gate of Heaven was the 7th Divine Envoy? Who was that? Su asked curiously. Fengqi's. Of it. This is the second time I've seen it. Su Li nodded, deep in thought. Chu Luiyue had already told them about the Palace of Illusions. At this moment, a figure walked over from not far away. He was very fast, and in a few seconds, he was in front of them. It was Chang Wanzhou. Master, Lord Sun Yi asked me to come and fetch you and His Highness. Chu Luiyue nodded. You came at the right time. I'll take Mr. Su to the Palace of Illusions. I'll leave the rest to you. Chang Wanzhou bowed respectfully. Yes. Chu Luiyue looked at Rongxiu. I'll be back soon. Rongxiu's thin lips curled up slightly. Okay. There was nothing to worry about. After Chu Luiyue said a few words, he invited Su Li to go to the Palace of Illusions with him. The two figures gradually disappeared into the distance. Rongxiu watched for a while, then retracted his gaze and looked at Chang Wanzhou, raising his eyebrows. Long time no see. You've become a god. Chang Wanzhou responded. Yes. Rongxiu smiled. It was faster than he had expected. Let's go. Chang Wanzhou took a step back, then turned around and led the way. This way, Your Highness. On the other side, Chu Luiyue led Su Li directly to the Palace of Illusions. They had walked past the star path. As Su Li walked, she looked around curiously. There were rows upon rows of houses here, but not many people came out. It seemed a little lonely. In the end, her gaze landed on the path that was flickering with spots of light. This is the star path. Chu Luiyue nodded. It's the same as the silver bridge from before. There are profound formations sealed below. The part we walked past just now was a profound formation of a profound king master. This part is a great profound king master. Su Li suddenly understood. Then these shouldn't be a problem for little Yu. She was very clear about how strong Chu Luiyue was. These are fine. The troublesome ones are the Great Grandmaster profound formations in front. Chu Luiyue smiled. Su Li was startled and looked forward in disbelief. A long and resplendent path extended upwards, all the way to the palace that stood in the distance. So many. Although she wasn't a profound master, she still had some understanding. A Great Grandmaster profound formation was several times more difficult than a Great Profound King Master. Moreover, even if a person reached the Great Grandmaster level, it only meant that they could use a profound formation of this level. It didn't mean that they could completely comprehend a profound formation of the same level. At a rough glance, there were at least 100 of them, right? So in the past 10,000 years, those who could comprehend all the profound formations here and enter the illusory God Palace were few and far between. The seventh divine envoy that I mentioned to you before was one of them. But don't worry. You're a weapon refining saint and have the qualifications to directly enter the illusory God Palace. Chu Luiyue smiled. Su Li was speechless. She reached out and patted her chest lightly. Fortunately, I'm a weapon refining master. Otherwise, these profound formations would really be difficult. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Su Li was probably the only person in the entire world who could say such words. Ordinary weapon refining masters wouldn't have an easier time entering the illusory God Palace than profound masters. How could a weapon refining saint break through so easily? Previously, Kong Qinglin was also said to have been stuck as a weapon refining venerable for thousands of years before finally breaking through the shackles and successfully entering that realm. It was just that Su Li's talent in this area was too strong. Moreover, her luck back then was also good. That was why she could so easily become a weapon refining saint. And how many people in the world had such luck? Ordinary people couldn't be envious. The further they went, the quieter their surroundings became. It was a silence that was extremely rare even for cultivators. The surrounding atmosphere also unknowingly became solemn and heavy. Although the two of them only walked by the side of the Star Road, they could still clearly feel the increasingly heavy pressure. Finally, the two of them arrived at the door. Chu Luiyue was about to knock on the door when he suddenly saw the door open and a person walk out. Chapter 2264. The person who came was Xu Jing. She originally planned to go to Herb Mountain, but she didn't expect to bump into Chu Luiyue as soon as she stepped out. Seeing that familiar face, Xu Jing was startled at first, then immediately frowned. Sheng Guanyu, why are you here? Because of the fear in her heart, her tone and attitude towards Chu Luiyue were much better than before. However, probably because there were no outsiders around, the impatience and irritation in her eyes were still faintly visible. Chu Luiyue didn't mind and smiled faintly. Greetings, 8th Oracle. I'm here to send Mr. Su to the palace of the illusory god. Mr. Su. Xu Jing's gaze turned slightly and only then did she see Su Li standing beside Chu Luiyue. Exalted goddess. Her frown deepened. Sheng Guanyu, don't tell me you don't know the requirements to enter the palace of the illusory god. She actually pulled such an ordinary-looking exalted goddess over and said that she wanted to enter the palace of the illusory god. Su Li raised her thin eyebrows slightly. Was she, looking down on her? Although she had always had a good temper, she wasn't someone who would be looked down upon and bullied. Moreover, this person in front of her had specifically bullied little Yu before. The threshold of the palace of the illusory god is really high. So even a weapon refining saint isn't qualified to enter. Su Li smiled faintly and asked. Xu Jing was startled and a trace of disbelief flashed across her eyes. You're a weapon refining saint. Why, don't I look like one? Su Li's lips curved slightly. Xu Jing was momentarily speechless and didn't speak for a long time. Chu Luiyue said. The seventh divine emissary also knows that I invited Mr. Su here. If you don't believe me, you can ask her. Xu Jing's face was a little ugly. She had just parted with Jin Yunlai not long ago, so how could she ask about this now? No need. She turned around and closed the door. Then, she looked at the two with a cold expression. If you're really a weapon-refining saint, you can naturally enter the palace of the illusory god. Chu Luiyue smiled. Does the eighth messenger mean that we have to open the door ourselves? Those who have the qualifications and strength to enter the palace of the illusory god will naturally have no problem opening the door. As Xu Jing spoke, she didn't want to talk to them anymore. She turned around and left. Su Li turned around to look at her. This eighth divine emissary is really arrogant. Chu Luiyue was already used to it. All the oracles here are like that, but she is considered outstanding. Mr. Su, can you open this door? Su Li retracted her gaze and looked at the closed door in front of her. It shouldn't be a problem. It's just... She suddenly paused, a trace of hesitation flashing across her face. Little you, this place, she had long heard from Chu Luiyue that this illusory god palace was exactly the same as the pavilion in the sky that appeared in the Red Moon Desert. Therefore, before coming, she had already mentally prepared herself. However, when she arrived here and saw the palace that truly existed, she still felt very strange. She thought for a moment and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Little you, have you tried going in? Chu Luiyue shook her head. No. It's also my first time here. Su Li looked at her, a trace of light flickering in her eyes. Since you were able to directly enter at that time, perhaps, it's the same here. Chu Luiyue's heart moved. Actually, she had thought of this before. After all, from the beginning, everything in the illusory god palace seemed to be against her. However, she didn't have any plans to try it for the time being. There were so many people in the illusory god palace. She didn't know how many pairs of eyes were staring at this place. If she really went in directly, it would cause a lot of trouble. That wasn't what she wanted to see right now. Therefore, for the sake of caution, she still chose to pass by. Su Li saw the change in her expression and instantly understood something. Then, I'll go in and take a look first. Chu Luiyue gently nodded. Su Li took a few steps forward and stretched out her hand. The moment her palm touched the door, she immediately felt that there was a gaze sweeping across her body. At this moment, it was as if her entire person was seen through. Su Li calmed down and exerted force on her hand. Creak, the door opened. She turned her gaze slightly and looked at Chu Luiyue. I'm going in. Mr. Su, please be careful. Su Li nodded and walked in without hesitation. Then, the door closed again. Chu Luiyue stared at the door for a while and turned to leave. At this moment, a slight fluctuation suddenly came from her dantian. For some reason, the water droplet floating quietly in his dantian started to ripple. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened and immediately suppressed it. She quickly turned around to take a look. Just now, there seemed to be a force that was calling her. She slowly clenched her hands in her sleeves and stood there waiting for a while. Seeing that nothing was wrong, she left. At the same time, in front of the empty black jade square, a figure suddenly appeared. It was the second messenger of God, Yu Qian. His expression was slightly serious as he stared at the black jade square in front of him. His eyes seemed to be surging with waves. He had only left for a short while and there was actually such a commotion here. Could it be? At this moment, light footsteps came from behind him. He immediately turned around to look. His eyes were extremely sharp, like a cold light piercing through. Suli stopped in her tracks and looked at the man who suddenly appeared in front of her. Her heart was in her throat. This man was extremely dangerous. Moreover, he seemed to be extremely hostile towards her. However, she had only just arrived and had not even seen the other party. Where did this hostility come from? Who are you? Yu Qian asked in a low voice. Suli suppressed her emotions and looked calm on the surface. She nodded and bowed. Her voice was calm and gentle. Suli, Yu Qian frowned and his eyes swept across her face. Finally, his gaze fell on the letter at her waist. Are you new? Yes. Yu Qian stared at her for a long time before slowly saying. Refining Saint. Suli was shocked. Refining saints were different from martial artists. Their cultivation level was hidden very deeply. Outsiders basically could not see it. However, this man only looked at her for a while and guessed it directly. Yes. She nodded. The trace of worry in Yu Qian's heart disappeared. All the refining saints in the world had an inseparable close relationship with the palace of the illusory god. This meant that the fluctuation just now was caused by her. Go southwest. The fifth messenger of God will be in charge. Suli felt that the dangerous aura of the other party disappeared in an instant. She was puzzled, but she did not ask. Thank you, messenger of God. Although she did not know the other party's ranking, in the palace of the illusory god, to have such an aura, it must be the messenger of God. Yu Qian had already looked at the black jade square again. The flame at the top of the white jade pillar was much dimmer than before. He frowned. Digression, today, I have to go out and try to get to 6:00. Chapter 2265. On the other side, Chang Wanzhou had already brought his men back to his residence. Due to the arrival of Rong Xiao and the others, the original courtyard was no longer big enough. However, Xin Yi had already tidied up the few courtyards beside them and was waiting for them to arrive. There were many courtyards in the Illusion God Palace, and the few courtyards beside them happened to be empty, so it was convenient for them. This commotion also attracted the attention of some people. Xiao Ran was originally sitting on his roof in boredom, staring at the star path and deep in thought. When he saw Chang Wanzhou coming over with his men, he was shocked. Because he had never seen the people behind him before. On second thought, he remembered that Chu Luiyue seemed to have said that he would go back and invite the artifact refining saint over. But why were there so many people? Seeing the group of people approaching, Xiao Ran touched his chin. These people are not weak, especially the young man in front, who was dressed in snow-white clothes. He was handsome and devilish, exuding a noble aura. If I'm not wrong, he should be that girl's husband. There was also the young man in black clothes behind him. He held a sword in one hand and looked cold and indifferent. He seemed to be a follower, but he had already broken through to the god realm. Xiao Ran was suddenly stunned and stared at Yan Qing a few more times. This person. Why does he look so familiar, as if I've seen him somewhere before? He frowned slightly and kept searching in his mind, but he couldn't find an answer. However, that familiar feeling lingered in his mind. At this moment, Yan Qing sensed his gaze and looked over. His facial features were handsome, but there was a faint coldness in his eyes. He was like a moving iceberg. In just an instant, Yan Qing retracted his gaze. Xiao Ran touched his chin. This person. I've never seen him before. Perhaps it was just my imagination. While Xiao Ran was secretly conflicted, Rong Xiao and the others had already arrived. Xin Yi was already waiting at the door. When he saw Rong Xiao and the others, he nodded slightly and bowed. Your Highness. Rong Xiao's gaze swept past him as he nodded and walked in. Xiao Ran didn't withdraw his gaze until all of them had entered the room. He frowned slightly. No matter how he looked at it, there didn't seem to be a problem. But, bang! Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. Xiao quickly raised his eyes to look over, only to see a silver stream of light soaring into the sky from the star passage. It quickly transformed into a profound formation in midair. Someone else is taking the star path? Xiao Ran's heart skipped a beat. He instantly soared into the air and looked over. When he saw it, he was overjoyed. Wasn't the woman who was currently standing on the star passage breaking the profound formation Chu Luyue? She had just brought people back, and she was already trying to break the Xian formation. Isn't this a little too efficient? Just as Xiao Ran was thinking about this, he saw another ray of light fly up. Another Xian formation was successfully activated. He was taken aback. Little girl, how can you be so fast? The commotion on the star passage quickly attracted the attention of the other people in the illusory god palace. When they discovered that this person was still Chu Luyue, many people were rather surprised. Isn't that Sheng Wanyu? Why is she taking the star path again so quickly? It seems like only half a month has passed since she turned back halfway. In such a short time, she has already comprehended the profound formation of the Great Xian Emperor Division. TSK. She has already activated 2 profound formations consecutively. It's probably not right to say that she has only broken one, right? Other things aside, her talent as a Xian master is indeed very shocking. I wonder how far she can go this time. She probably came because she has a certain level of confidence. However, the number of profound formations in the Great Xian Emperor Division is not small. She has only deciphered less than 1/10 of them. She might be able to walk for a while, but it probably won't be too long. Everyone had different opinions about Chu Luyue's actions. Some were looking forward to it, while others disagreed. Chu Luyue, who was standing on the star path, automatically ignored all these voices. She had originally planned to continue walking the star path after inviting Su Li over. To the current her, these profound formations of the Great Xian Emperor Division were no longer of any difficulty. The key was whether Su Li could find some information on her side. And during this period of time, she also planned to walk forward as much as possible. This way, if something happened, she could openly enter the illusory god palace with the fastest speed possible. With this thought, she lightly waved her hands in front of her. Several streams of light flew out and intertwined with each other. Not long after, another profound formation was deciphered. She took a step forward and continued forward. Time slowly passed. The number of onlookers also increased. Gradually, they finally realized that Chu Luyue did not seem to have returned on a whim because she had deciphered a few profound formations at the last moment. She had clearly made preparations long ago. Seeing her decipher profound formations one after another and easily activate them, everyone's attitude rapidly changed. These profound formations of the Great Xian Emperor Division are not simple. She actually managed to draw them so smoothly and easily. In the crowd, someone could not help but mutter in a low voice, unable to conceal the shock in his voice. Previously, although her performance was very outstanding, most of those were profound formations of the Great Xian Emperor Division. It was not that no one in the illusory god palace could do it, but it might take a little longer. But this time was different. The difficulty of the profound formations of the Great Xian Emperor Division had increased by more than a little. Even if she had not rested during this period of time to study these, it should not be so heaven-defying, right? Mu Yafing had also arrived at some point in time. However, she did not go to the very front and only chose a hidden corner to wait. From where she stood, she could see that Chu Luyue was following the star path and was slowly approaching here. She was also getting closer and closer to the illusory god palace. When she looked carefully, she could even see the calmness in Chu Luyue's eyes. It was very clear that these profound formations of the Great Xian Emperor division that others found difficult to decipher did not pose any threat to her at all. Along the way, she had already activated more than 10 profound formations continuously without stopping to rest. But there was not the slightest bit of fatigue on her face. It seemed like she was just strolling leisurely. Mu Yafing gritted her teeth. A few voices of discussion came from the side. Don't you guys feel that Shengguan seems to be very relaxed when walking this segment of the star path? You think so too? I thought I was the only one who felt that way. From the beginning until now, how long has it been? She hasn't stuttered even once. The time she spent on each profound formation is very short. Even Mu Yafing did not reach this level back then. Mu Yafing can't compare to Shengguan, right? She broke her record the last time. Sigh, if not for the fact that Shengguan just came to the illusory god palace, I would have thought that she had already seen these profound formations. There seemed to be a ball of fire burning in Mu Yafing's chest. She suddenly said, how do you know that she hasn't seen them before? Chapter 2266. Hearing her voice, those people turned their heads and looked over. They hadn't noticed it before, but now that Mu Yafing took the initiative to speak, they realized that she had come here without them knowing. They immediately became nervous. Did she hear what they said just now? No matter what, Mu Yafing was the most promising Xian master in the illusory god palace to complete the Star Road. Now that someone was performing better than her, how could she feel good? They looked at each other, and one of them finally couldn't help but ask. Mu Yafing, what do you mean by that? Could it be that Shengguan has really seen these Xian formations? That's impossible. How long has she been in the illusory god palace? And this is her first time coming to this place on the Star Road. It's not good to say such things, right? Another person said softly. Mu Yafing smiled coldly. What's there to not say? When she passed by the Xian King teacher's Xian formation, didn't she say that she had seen a portion of it before? They choked. Chu Luyue did say that, but those Xian formations weren't very high level. Those who had some background in the Divine Ruins world might have seen many of them. There was nothing much to say about that. But the Xian King teacher's Xian formation was different. In the world, there was no place with more high-level Xian formations than the illusory god palace. Even if she had seen them before, it was at most a portion. It was absolutely impossible for her to see all of them, let alone cover all the Xian formations on the Star Road. Do you really think that there's someone in this world who can instantly comprehend the Xian formations of the great Xian King teacher with just a glance? Mu Yafing said softly with a calm expression. Their expressions changed. What do you mean by that? That's right. No matter how talented Chu Luyue was, she shouldn't be so heaven-defying. If this continued, she could almost tie with the 7th Divine Emissary, right? One had to know that even the 7th Divine Emissary spent hundreds of years to complete the Star Road. This was also why he could become the 7th Divine Emissary. How long had Chu Luyue been here? Wasn't this going too smoothly? Mu Yafing said. I don't mean anything. Everyone has sharp eyes, and I don't need to say anything. These words made people even more suspicious. Suddenly, a young man beside him seemed to have thought of something. Oh, right. I remember that Shengguan has a good relationship with Zhenbao Pavilion. Lord Ji seemed to have personally looked for her and invited her to the treasure pavilion. As soon as these words were spoken, it immediately caused quite a commotion. Really? Did His Excellency personally invite him? What kind of status does Lord Ji have? Why would he be so courteous to her? But she doesn't have a bloodline totem. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case, right? Of course it's true. I'm not the only one who saw it that day. Wait, Did you forget that the treasure pavilion still has a copy of the mythical flame diagram? Could it be that she saw this? The crowd fell silent for a moment. They knew very well what the mythical flame diagram was. If that was the case, it wouldn't be difficult to explain all of this. However, there was another problem. The mythical diagram of flame is so precious. How can Shangguan be qualified to read it? You want to buy it? That was impossible. Even a well-known figure like Mu Yafeng, who had been accumulating wealth for many years, didn't have enough capital to buy it. Needless to say, the others didn't. Could it be that His Excellency Ji is behind this? Someone whispered, but halfway through, he was suddenly interrupted. I say, what's the point of guessing here and there? Everyone, including Mu Yafeng, was shocked and turned around to look. Xiao Ran had appeared not far behind them. At this moment, he was leaning lazily against the wall with his arms crossed. He looked at them with a half-smile. Anyway, His Excellency Mingshu spends most of his time in the treasure pavilion. Isn't it better for you to go over and ask him? Everyone was speechless. His Excellency Mingshu always looked amiable, but everyone knew that he was not to be trifled with. Even the 8th Divine Envoy was not afraid of the treasure pavilion, let alone them. If they went over now, wouldn't they be making trouble for themselves? When Mu Yafeng saw Xiao Ran, a trace of fear flashed across her eyes. However, at this moment, Xiao Ran suddenly looked over. Mu Yafeng. The corners of his lips curled up. Others may not know why Shangguan Yu was able to progress so smoothly on the Star Road, but don't you know? Mu Yafeng's lips instantly turned pale. The people beside her looked at Mu Yafeng and then at Xiao Ran in confusion. What was he hinting at? However, Xiao Ran didn't say anything else. He turned his gaze and looked at Chu Luiyue. Actually, he was also very curious. How far could she go this time? Mu Yafeng clenched her fists and shut her mouth. The fact that Chu Luiyue was copying Xian formations for the treasure pavilion was considered a secret. If this was said by Chu Luiyue or the treasure pavilion, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if it was said by her, it was different. Although she was very unhappy with the fact that the treasure pavilion was biased towards Chu Luiyue, she wasn't stupid enough to offend them publicly. While he was arguing, Chu Luiyue had already cracked 3 more Xian formations. Many people were bewildered when they saw her stubbornly moving forward. Where can she go? Rong Xiao stood in the courtyard and looked up slightly. He could see the silver stream of light rushing into the sky. Xian formations quickly condensed and dissipated, and the distance kept moving forward. Obviously, she was getting closer and closer to the illusory god palace. Shangguan Jing walked out of the house and lowered his eyes, as if in deep thought. He had just asked Tang Ke some questions. Ever since he saw Kong Qinglin break through to the weapon-refining Saint realm with his own eyes, he vaguely felt that he was closer to that threshold. However, a little bit was still a little bit. Fortunately, Tang Ke was also here and gave him a lot of advice. He felt that he had comprehended something, but he was still lacking something to break through the window paper. Seeing Rong Xiao standing in the courtyard, he raised his voice and said, "Rong Xiao, you've just arrived at the illusory god palace. Why don't you walk around?" Chapter 2267. Hearing this, Rong Xiao looked back and smiled faintly. Since I'm already here, there's no need to rush. Seeing that he was calm and composed, Shangguan Jing was also relieved. Rong Xiao was extremely talented and resourceful. He probably already had his own plans and didn't need others to worry about him. Following his line of sight, Shangguan Jing smiled. It seems that is going quite well. Rong Xiao nodded slightly. Yes. Those Xian formations were indeed nothing to her. Shangguan Jing waved his hand. Keep an eye on that girl and tell her not to be so anxious. I'll go into seclusion for the next few days. Previously, when Chu Luiyue wasn't here, he had been carefully watching over this group of people. Now that Rong Xiao was here, he could finally free up some time. Rong Xiao's thin lips curled slightly. Don't worry. Only then did Sheng Wanjing return to his room. Illusory God Palace. Jin Yunlai walked out of the door and looked into the distance. She's continuing. The commotion on the Star Road wasn't small. It was hard for him not to know. After staring for a while, Jin Yunlai's expression gradually became serious. Chu Liuyue's speed was much faster than he expected. It seems that she's really obtained the mythical flame diagram. Jin Yunlai murmured softly. Previously, Mu Yafeng only sent a message saying that Treasure Pavilion had asked Chu Luiyue to copy the Xian formations on the second floor. But at that time, he wasn't sure which ones were which. But now, everything couldn't be clearer. If she hadn't read the mythical flame diagram, she wouldn't have been able to go so smoothly on the Star Road. It seems that Treasure Pavilion really values her. They're even willing to part with this thing. Jin Yunlai frowned slightly. But he was still puzzled. Because even so, she shouldn't be so fast. The further she went, the more complicated and difficult the profound formations became. However, her speed was not affected at all. This almost made people suspect that she had already memorized all the Xian formations in the entire Xian formation in her mind. But, how is this possible? No matter how high her comprehension ability was, it shouldn't be this fast. Perhaps I should find a time to talk to Chu Luiyue. At this moment, a familiar fluctuation came from the front. Jin Yunlai's heart tightened. Then, a figure appeared in the void. The enchanting book and the crimson golden feather also flew out. Jin Yunlai quickly caught the item. Lord Yumo, why are you back so soon? He had thought that he would have to wait for several days. Umo smiled faintly. The Celestial Emperor already knows the names on the list. Naturally, it won't take long. What's more, the gate of heaven was still open, and there were many things that the seventh divine emissary had to take care of. Jin Yunlai said respectfully. Yes. This was probably the Celestial Emperor's order. If the Celestial Emperor has any other orders, I will inform you. Umo said. Jin Yunlai responded. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked. Lord Umo, wasn't it Lord Yen Qing who was in charge of the palace of the illusory god? Why was it suddenly changed to Umo? Umo said faintly. Seventh divine emissary, this kind of thing shouldn't concern you, right? Jin Yunlai was shocked. Only then did he realize that he had crossed the line and immediately took half a step back. Lord Umo, please forgive me. I didn't mean to offend you. Umo stared at him for a while. It's good that you know. After saying that, he turned and left. After a long time, Jin Yunlai let out a long sigh. Chapter 2268. Herb Mountain. Compared to the past, this place was much livelier now. Ever since Xu Jing was reprimanded in public and abolished many of the rules she had set, the celestial physician of the illusionary god palace was no longer restrained and could freely come and go to Herb Mountain. When Xu Jing arrived, she saw such a scene. She looked around and saw that almost every mountain was crowded with people. All kinds of medicinal herbs were constantly being picked. Although this was not the first time she had seen this scene, Xu Jing's heart still skipped a beat. In the past, if these people wanted to get these things, they would have to put in a lot of effort and try to curry favor with her. But now, they no longer put her in their eyes. Even when a few people walked past her, they only greeted her with a simple salute and left quickly. If it was in the past, Xu Jing took a deep breath and suppressed all the messy thoughts in her mind. Now that things had become like this, it was useless for her to think more. She did not want to give up the position of the 8th Divine Envoy. However, at this moment, she glanced out of the corner of her eye and suddenly saw many people heading towards a certain mountain peak. She was in a daze when she saw a woman leisurely walking over from afar. She was wearing a colorful dress, and her black hair fluttered in the wind. Her graceful figure was fully displayed as she moved. The colorful string on her wrist was decorated with small jade fragments. She only needed to lift her hand slightly to tuck her hair behind her ear, and the sound of the bracelet could be heard. Xu Jing's face immediately turned cold. Those people were obviously heading towards that woman. "Miss Little Hatchie, we meet again. What a coincidence. Ha ha ha. Miss Little Hatchie, did you bring back enough medicinal herbs last time? What have you taken a fancy to today? Why don't I help you look? Miss Little Hatchie, I heard that you are quite interested and talented in refining medicine. Why don't we exchange pointers when we have time? How about it?" Extremely earnest voices could be heard one after another. Many young men came to Little Hatchie's side with eager faces. Little Hatchie plucked an ice lotus and smiled lazily. "I've been coming here every day recently, so it's not a coincidence that we've run into each other. Also, there are so many medicinal herbs here, I can take whatever I like. As for sparring..." She blinked, and her thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly. Her beautiful eyes were flowing with light, and it was especially alluring. "I'm not that free. Most of these people were only grand physicians. How could they compare notes with her? If she had the time, she might as well go back and continue refining pills. Ever since she broke through to senior doctor, Big Brother really knew how to squeeze her dry." Thinking of this, she sighed sadly and resentfully. "Besides, I've been very tired recently." Everyone was originally embarrassed by her words, but when they saw her frown, they all felt sorry for her. "If that's the case, we won't disturb you any further." That's right, that's right. Little Hatchie, go back and rest as soon as you're done." Finally, it was quiet. Little 8 blinked his eyes and smiled in satisfaction. Then, he leisurely picked some herbs. These people were really interesting. Previously, because she had offended the 8th Divine Envoy, none of them dared to say a word. Now that the situation had reversed, they were no longer afraid and followed her. After choosing, she prepared to leave. However, just as she turned around, she felt a gaze that could not be considered kind fall on her. She stopped in her tracks and looked up. Then, she smiled. "8th Divine Envoy, it's been a long time." Xu Jing did not want to pay much attention to her, but seeing the smile on her face, he felt that it was especially dazzling. Although the herb mountain is open now, the herbs inside are especially precious. If you can't make good use of them, it's better not to take so much. It's more appropriate to leave things for others who need them more. Little Hatchie was stunned. "8th Divine Envoy, why do you say that? Why did this medicinal herb become a waste in my hands?" Xu Jing looked at her coldly and indifferently. This woman was like a demon. All her thoughts were probably spent on her face. How could she have the time and energy to think about refining pills? With so many people disturbing you all day, you probably can't refine pills well. Xu Jing's words were tactful and sarcastic. He was just short of directly saying that Little Hatchie only thought about hooking up with men every day. The expressions of many people around them changed when they heard this. No matter what, it was not nice to say such things to a girl. Unexpectedly, just when they all thought that Little Hatchie was going to flip out, Little Hatchie suddenly smiled. "Oh, 8th Divine Envoy, are you talking about this? You don't have to worry about this. Although it's a little annoying sometimes, I'm already used to it. People who don't catch my eye will definitely not disturb me. It's the same no matter how many people there are. Oh, I almost forgot. Eighth Divine Envoy, you probably haven't experienced this before. That's why you think that people's hearts are so easily swayed. She took a step forward and tilted her head to smile. Eighth Divine Envoy, if you've seen this many times like me, you'll naturally get used to it. Shu Jing was instantly furious. This little Hachi, was she mocking her? She was the eighth Divine Envoy. Of course, she could not be compared to this seductive girl. Hey, eighth Divine Envoy, I see that the dark circles under your eyes are getting heavier. Have you not been resting well recently? Well, if I were to be reprimanded in front of everyone, I reckon that I wouldn't be able to hold my head up high. Impudent. Hee, eighth Divine Envoy, don't be angry. I'm just joking with you. I've never been scolded by anyone before. Of course, I can't understand how you feel right now. If I've said something wrong, please be magnanimous and don't hold it against me. Shu Jing was already choked to the point that she could not say a word. Only a raging fire seemed to be burning in her chest. She could not wait to tear the girl in front of her apart. Little Hachi had already waved her small hand and lifted her feet to leave. The medicinal ingredients this time are enough for a while. I'll come back after a while. Eighth Divine Envoy, let's meet again another day. After successfully choking Shu Jing, little Hachi was in a good mood. She happily returned to her residence. However, before she reached her destination, she saw a person standing at the intersection. She stopped in her tracks. That person had already seen her. After hesitating for a moment, he came forward to greet her. Miss Little Hachi. Little Hachi looked at him in surprise. Liang He. Why are you here again? Didn't he run away because of her anger? Didn't he say that he would never look for her again? Why? Liang He's face turned red. Miss Little Hachi, I was reckless that day. Please don't take it to heart. After I went back that day, I've thought about it carefully. Little Hachi is a peerless beauty with countless admirers. I really don't have the qualifications to ask Little Hachi to like me. He hesitated for a while before he spoke with difficulty. Miss Little Hachi, I've thought about it. Your proposal that day. I can accept it. Little Hachi. Digression, in the end, a bootlicker will end up with nothing. Chapter 2269. Is Liang He crazy? The corner of Little Hachi's mouth twitched as she took half a step back. This isn't too good, right? Liang He hurriedly said, Lady Little Hachi, I remember you said that the person you like isn't in the Illusion God Palace, right? If he doesn't come, then. Lady Little Hachi, can you consider me for a while? Little Hachi took half a step back. You mean, you want this lady to be with you first, and when he comes, you can leave? Liang He's face was extremely embarrassed, but he still nodded. When he heard Little Eight's words that day, he was indeed extremely angry in his heart. That was why he left angrily after saying those harsh words. But these days, Little Hachi's figure kept appearing in his mind. He couldn't sleep with anyone, and he couldn't do anything else. His entire mind was in a mess. Thus, after thinking for a while, he finally made this extremely difficult decision. Although he also felt that this was very bad, after saying it out loud, his heart felt a bit more relaxed. Of course, he also had his own plans. What kind of place was the Illusion God Palace? How could he come and go as he pleased? Who knows, that person might never come. Even if he came, it wasn't as if he didn't have a way to deal with him. Little Hachi saw that his expression was firm, as if he was really going to do this. She immediately felt unwell. What was this called? After waiting for Little Hachi's reply for a long time, Liang He was also a bit nervous. Lady Little Hachi, what do you think? Little Hachi. Suddenly, a calm and cold voice came from behind him. Little Hachi raised her head and saw that a person had already opened the door to the courtyard. He was holding a sword with both hands and standing upright, looking over with an indifferent expression. It was Enchanting. Little Hachi widened her eyes in shock, almost suspecting that she had seen wrongly. Wasn't this person in the Peach Blossom Cove? Why did he suddenly come here? After thinking for a moment, she immediately realized something. You followed His Highness here. Enchanting nodded. His expression was still handsome and cold. His eyes swept across the two, stopping for a moment on Liang He. Liang He. Liang He's face filled with astonishment. You know me. Enchanting said indifferently, I've heard of you. Liang He was even more puzzled. This person didn't seem to be from the Illusion God Palace. You are, from the looks of it. He came from the courtyard and seemed to be very familiar with little 8, Enchanting. Liang He looked, Yanzas His Highness Tian, Ants Hachi Heeses, of Sav SSS. Was SSS, she, T's, S sheet. She said softly, Enchanting, you're finally here. I've been waiting for so long. Enchanting's body stiffened. He wanted to push her hand away, but when he looked down and saw her beautiful eyes, he suddenly stopped. Liang He was also stunned. Miss Little Hachi, you are, during this period of time, he had some understanding of Little Hachi. Although she was enchanting and beautiful, in reality, she was very distant and polite when interacting with other people. Apart from Chu Luiyue and a few others, she was indifferent to most people. She didn't even bother to talk to them. Not to mention such an intimate attitude. Little Hachi moved forward, intending to hug Enchanting's arm. However, Enchanting was holding his sword with both hands, motionless. It was like an iron cylinder defense. She raised her head and glared at him. She reached out and pinched his waist. Give me your arm. Hurry up. Would it kill him to cooperate with her? However, she didn't manage to twist it. Enchanting's waist was thin. Under his thin clothes, there were tough muscles. Her pinch was like a toy to him. Enchanting lowered his eyes to look at her. Little Hachi threw 2 daggers at him. Enchanting let go of his arm. Little Hachi immediately took advantage of the situation. Her slender white arms held his arm, and she moved closer to him. Her skin was really too white. Under the sunlight, it glowed with a clear and lustrous light. It was as if a slight force would leave a mark on it. Enchanting calmly looked away. Little Hachi had already turned around to look at Liang He. Now, is it clear enough? Liang He's face turned pale. He didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, she would come after he had just gritted his teeth and made such a difficult decision. He paused for a moment before asking, Is this the person you said you liked before? Enchanting's eyebrows twitched. Then, he heard the woman beside him laugh softly. Yes. Enchanting lowered his eyes slightly. Look, her appearance, figure, and temperament. Which one of them isn't the best? Little Hachi said as she tapped the back of Enchanting's hand. I remember that you've broken through to God before, right? Enchanting paused. Yes. Little Hachi immediately raised her eyebrows and smiled proudly. Very good. What she wanted was to crush him. Liang He, now, do you still want to compete? If you were me, who would you choose? Liang He choked and couldn't say anything. It was one thing to hear about it before, and another to see it with his own eyes. If this person hadn't come, he could still convince himself, but now, she saw such a man standing beside her, and she was intimately leaning against him. The two of them were so close that there was no gap between them, just like a perfect couple. If he continued to pester her, he would really become the joke of the entire Illusion God Palace. Liang He gritted his teeth, but his face was pale. If he had known earlier, Liang He, right? Before he could continue, Yanqing's arm dropped and grabbed little Hachi's hand. His palm was hot, and little Hachi immediately shivered and looked back at him in surprise. Yanqing's expression was as cold as before. He looked at Liang He and said lightly, "Since she has already rejected you, please respect yourself. From today onwards, you are not allowed to be within 10 steps of her. Otherwise, you don't want to know how fast my sword is." The last sentence was cold and heavy, and it was a naked threat. Liang He's face turned red, and he was extremely embarrassed. But he was a celestial doctor. Unless he couldn't take it anymore, he wouldn't fight with a venerable god expert. Yanqing was too lazy to care about his reply. He pulled little Hachi and turned around. "Little Hachi, let's go." Little 8 blinked. Seeing Liang He's defeated expression, and knowing that he wasn't going to chase after them, little 8 happily followed him. The courtyard's door was quickly closed. Liang He stood there for a while. Feeling extremely embarrassed, he finally left in a hurry. Little 8 turned his head to take a look and saw that he had already fled. Instantly, he narrowed his eyes in satisfaction and smiled. To deal with this kind of person, she had to use ruthless moves. Although she was shocked when he agreed to her suggestion, after thinking about it carefully, she felt that something was wrong. Liang He was the youngest supreme doctor in the Illusion God Palace. How could he really do this? As soon as Yanqing appeared, he was forced to retreat. She turned around. "Lord Yanqing, many thanks. I couldn't tell that you were quite sensible." Yanqing let go of her hand. His fingertips seemed to still have that delicate and smooth touch, as well as a faint wisp of her fragrance. He said softly, "It's nothing. Don't mention it." Chapter 2270. Little Hachi pursed her red lips. There was nothing wrong with Yanqing. He was just as cold as an iceberg all day long. He was so serious that he was almost stubborn. She thanked him sincerely, but he was still so polite. She yawned. "Then I won't disturb you, Mr. Yanqing. I'll go back first." She had just taken a step when Yanqing called her again. "Miss Little Hachi." Little Hachi paused and looked back at him. Her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. "What did you call me just now?" Yanqing was stunned. "Miss Little Hachi. That's not right. You just called me Little 8. Little Hachi walked forward and came to Yanqing. She tilted her head and looked at him. "Why did you call me Little Hachi now? You sound so unfamiliar." She thought they were already familiar with each other. Yanqing paused for a moment. There was a reason just now. Little Hachi stared at him for a while and snorted. "Forget it. Call me whatever you want." She couldn't teach this person in a short time. After solving a small problem, Little 8's mood was still very good. Moreover, it could be said that he owed Yanqing a favor. "Please take care of me in the future, Mr. Yanqing. If something like this happens again, please remember to help me, Mr. Yanqing." Yanqing's expression changed slightly. "In the future. This is not appropriate, is it?" How could Little 8 not know what he was thinking? His lips curled up. "Mr. Yanqing, you're not married, and I'm not married. What's wrong with this?" She didn't care about those people, but as time passed and there were more and more people, she would be annoyed occasionally. Now that Yanqing was here, wouldn't it save her a lot of trouble? Yanqing looked at her and asked. "If one day Little Hachi girl meets someone she likes, then I'll explain to him when the time comes." Little Hachi patted him on the shoulder. "Don't worry, I won't implicate others because of this." Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes widened slightly. Could it be that Lord Yenqing already has someone he likes? If that was the case, then it was indeed inappropriate for her to do so. Yenqing looked at her and his Adam's apple bobbed. No. Little Hachi was relieved and smiled again. That's good, that's good. I'll take my leave first. I won't disturb Lord Yenqing. As he spoke, he walked towards his room. After a long time, Yenqing withdrew her gaze and rubbed her fingertips gently. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Liyue was still moving forward on the star path. She had already deciphered almost all of the Grand Xian King Division's profound formations. The one in front of her was the last one. As long as she successfully executed this, it would mean that she had completed 4/5 of the entire star path and officially stepped into the path of a Grand Master's profound formation. The surrounding people were also waiting with bated breath. At this point, Chu Liyue's talent and strength were already beyond doubt. Even if she didn't have a bloodline totem, everything she had displayed so far was enough to make people exclaim in admiration. Previously, when she broke Mu Yafeng's record, everyone thought that she was at most a little stronger than Mu Yafeng. But looking at it now, how was it just a little? Chu Liyue had clearly left Mu Yafeng far behind. Bang! A silver stream of light flew up. A profound formation instantly condensed above Chu Liyue's head. She raised her head slightly and took a look. Then, she let out a long breath. Actually, her mental energy and strength were also greatly exhausted at this time. Her lips were somewhat pale. She closed her eyes and adjusted the aura in her body. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Is she going to stop? She can't not stop. Isn't she a Grand Xian King teacher? The profound formations in front are all at the Grand Master level. That's true. But even so, she's still really powerful. This speed, if it were me, I really wouldn't dare to think about it. If she also had a bloodline totem, what would Mu Yafeng do? I reckon that the 7th divine emissary would also treat her differently. What a pity. All kinds of discussions came one after another. There were also some people who quietly looked at Mu Yafeng and observed her expression. It was just that Mu Yafeng was expressionless at this time, so they couldn't see anything. Of course, she was definitely unhappy. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't be happy at this time. How could Mu Yafeng not know that these people were looking at her? All these years, because she was highly regarded by the 7th divine emissary, she was pursued by many people and also secretly envied by many people. There were definitely many people who were waiting to see her make a fool of herself. So no matter what, she definitely couldn't show anything at this time. Seeing that the last profound formation of a Grand Xian King teacher was also displayed, Mu Yafeng's hands in her sleeves clenched into a ball. It didn't matter. She was only a Grand Xian King teacher. Even if she had already seen the mythical flame diagram, it was impossible for her to comprehend those profound formations in such a short time. How could that threshold be crossed so easily? Thinking of this, Mu Yafeng's mood finally improved a little. She turned around and planned to leave. However, at this time, the surrounding crowd suddenly became restless. Many people sucked in cold air and let out waves of exclamations. Mu Yafeng immediately felt uneasy and turned around to look. This look finally caused the calm expression on her face to crack. A trace of shock and disbelief flowed out from between her brows. The woman standing on the star path didn't leave as everyone expected. Instead, after a short rest, she continued forward. Without the slightest hesitation, she stepped in. At the same time, a spot of light suddenly lit up. A Grand Master profound formation. Chapter 2271. Without any hesitation, she stepped into the path of the great Grand Master Xian formation. Countless streams of light flew out from her hands and quickly intertwined with each other to draw an extremely complicated Xian formation. Many people were dazzled just by looking at it. However, from the beginning to the end, Chu Liyue's movements did not have the slightest hesitation or pause. Every ray of light seemed to have its own consciousness as they landed where they were supposed to be. After a while, the outline of a Xian formation appeared in front of her. The lines on it were also quickly filling in and outlining. She's actually trying to use a great Grandmaster Xian formation. After the initial commotion, the surrounding crowd quieted down. Countless pairs of eyes stared at this scene without blinking, afraid that they would miss something. Mu Yafing was also watching. However, the more she watched, the more panicked she felt. From the looks of it, Chu Liyue did not seem to be using a great Grandmaster Xian formation for the first time. Could it be that she's hiding her strength? Mu Yafing could not help but murmur softly. Other than this answer, she could not think of any other reasonable explanation. However, Chu Liyue was a god and had just broken through to Supreme Doctor. How could she still be a great Grandmaster? Even if the Illusory God Palace gathered all the top geniuses in the world, there had never been such a heaven-defying person. Illusory God Palace. When Chu Liyue stepped forward and began to try to use a great Grandmaster Xian formation, Jin Yunlai knew about it. He stood with his hands behind his back and stared in the direction of the star path. After a moment, he no longer hesitated and walked outside. Even if she did not have a bloodline totem, such talent was extremely rare. He had to make a trip there personally. When he passed by the Black Jade Square, he glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw Yu Qian standing there. Jin Yunlai stopped in his tracks, half-turned, and bowed in Yu Qian's direction. Second Divine Envoy. Yu Qian asked, "Are you planning to meet Shengwan Yu?" Jin Yunlai was not surprised that he guessed it and nodded. Yes. Yu Qian smiled. I heard that he's not even 20 years old yet. To be able to perform so well, it's indeed rare. Jin Yunlai looked at him strangely. Yu Qian's standards were actually very high. There weren't many people in the entire Illusory God Palace that could receive such praise from him. Just go ahead. After she finishes walking the Star Road, bring her to Fengming Mountain and say that I want to see her. Jin Yunlai was shocked. Fengming Mountain. Yu Qian nodded and laughed. You probably don't know, but the current young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan is her contracted magical beast. Jin Yunlai walked out of the illusory shrine with mixed feelings and followed the star path. The moment he appeared on the star passage, he immediately attracted the attention of many people. The seventh divine emissary is here. Are you here for Shengwan Yu? That must be it, right? After all, Shengwan Yu is the only one on the star passage. With such talent and performance, the seventh divine emissary would have already arrived if it were someone else. It's just that Shengwan Yu doesn't have a bloodline totem, so it's been delayed until now. Mu Yafing heard the commotion and immediately looked up. When she saw that it was really Jin Yunlai, she pursed her lips and dug her nails into her palms. Even this person is here. Is Chu Liyue really going to make a comeback? Bang! A loud explosion sounded. Mu Yafing turned around in realization and saw a silver profound formation that was much bigger than the one before. It was also much brighter and more dazzling than before. It was like a flower blooming in midair. The bright light illuminated the surroundings, and it also added a layer of faint light to Chu Liyue, who was standing below. Everyone was silent. The Grandmaster Xian formation was completed. This also meant that Chu Liyue had officially broken through to the Grandmaster Xian formation. Mu Yafing's face turned pale and she almost couldn't stand straight. She had suffered too many blows during this period of time. Moreover, they all came from the same person. Every time she thought that she had guessed Chu Liyue's true cultivation level, the other party would display even more shocking abilities. Looking at the great Grandmaster's Xian formation that had been successfully unleashed, there was a moment where she was completely stunned. She wasn't the only one. Most of the onlookers felt the same way, including Jin Yunlai. He couldn't help but frown as he looked at the woman in a red dress with her hair flying in the wind. You deliberately concealed your strength before this. Chu Luiyue looked up. The Xian formation was displayed perfectly and it was a good start. Only when she heard Jin Yunlai's voice did she retract her gaze, and the corners of her lips raised into a brilliant arc. No, why would the seventh divine emissary say that? Jin Yunlai didn't believe her. If you weren't a grandmaster, how could you have comprehended this Xian formation in such a short time? Even a grandmaster would need at least a month to do so. She hadn't even been in the illusory god palace for that long. Chu Luiyue smiled lightly. Seventh divine emissary, I believe you can tell if I'm hiding my strength or not. As for how I did it in such a short time, the reason is simple, I'm very talented. Jin Yunlai, everyone, no one could refute this answer. Looking at Chu Luiyue's magnanimous and relaxed appearance, Jin Yunlai's heart wavered. Could it be that I really underestimated her before? When she walked the star path last time, I did pay attention. She was indeed a Grandmaster Xian. Did she really break through recently? But this was too, Jin Yunlai frowned. He suddenly understood why the Precious Treasures Pavilion had chosen her. If what she said was true, then, the aptitude she possessed was extremely terrifying. Jin Yunlai stared at her for a while and asked again. Do you still want to continue? Chu Luiyue glanced ahead. The Xian formations in this area were relatively simple and wouldn't take too much effort. But Jin Yunlai's arrival at this time seemed a little unusual. No. She shook her head and looked at Jin Yunlai. Seventh divine emissary, are you looking for me for something? Jin Yunlai knew that she was very smart, so she didn't hide it and simply nodded. Come with me. After saying that, she turned and walked towards the illusory god palace. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Jin Yunlai had always looked down on her. It was the first time that he took the initiative to look for her like today. Moreover, why was he still walking towards the illusory god palace? Was there anything that he couldn't say here? Chu Luiyue's mind raced. Without any hesitation, she followed him. After the two left, the originally silent crowd suddenly became restless and all kinds of guesses were made. Mu Yafeng was annoyed and turned to leave. On the other side, Chu Luiyue followed Jin Yunlai all the way. Jin Yunlai didn't say anything along the way, so Chu Luiyue tactfully kept quiet. The two, one in front and one behind, arrived at the gate of the illusory god palace again. Then, Jin Yunlai turned and walked to the right. Chapter 2272. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. This was the end of the star path, and further ahead was the magnificent and sacred palace of the illusory god. Other than that, there was only the rolling mountain range behind them. They were obviously not going to the palace of the illusory god. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, and finally asked, Seventh Oracle, where are we going now? Jin Yunlai didn't even turn his head. Fengming Mountain. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Fengming Mountain. What's that place? Jin Yunlai didn't stop walking. You'll know when we get there. His voice was as cold as ever, as if he didn't want to say more. Chu Luiyue's lips moved, and she swallowed the rest of her words. Yes. Chu Luiyue continued to follow Jin Yunlai. They were walking along the outer wall of the palace of the illusory god. Because it was still cold and cheerless, there was no one else on the wide road except for the two of them. After all, this was still the territory of the palace of the illusory god. After walking for a while, Jin Yunlai finally stopped. In front of the two of them, there was a translucent barrier that blocked the road. A faint pressure was emitted from it. Even though Chu Luiyue was already a venerable god expert, she still felt a sense of suffocation in her chest. She frowned slightly, and quietly became alert. This time, the second oracle wants to see you. You should think about what to say later. Jin Yunlai finally turned around to look at her and said indifferently. Chu Luiyue was stunned. The second oracle. This identity was already the second in command of the oracles, and even Jin Yunlai and Xu Jing had to treat him with respect. But such a person actually wanted to see her at this time. In an instant, countless guesses flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, but her face was as calm as ever. Thank you for your guidance, seventh oracle. Jin Yunlai nodded when she saw that she was neither servile nor overbearing. Other than his bloodline totem, Chu Luiyue's performance in other aspects was flawless. He raised his chin. Go in. Chu Luiyue felt a little strange. The seventh oracle is not coming with us. Jin Yunlai narrowed her eyes. This is Phoenix Cry Mountain, adjacent to the Illusory God Palace, and also one of the forbidden areas of the entire Illusory God Palace. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter. He couldn't do it either. Chu Luiyue revealed a look of understanding, but secretly snorted in his heart. It turned out that this was the forbidden area that Jin Yunlai had mentioned before. However, he said that it was one of the forbidden areas. The Illusory God Palace had quite a few forbidden areas. She collected her thoughts and walked forward. She took a step forward, and her figure disappeared behind the barrier. Seeing that she had entered, Jin Yunlai frowned and remained silent for a while. He had always felt that it was inappropriate for the Yu Qian to meet Chu Luiyue here. However, the Yu Qian was the second oracle after all. In the current Illusory God Palace, he had a lot of authority. Especially now that the first oracle had been in seclusion, many things had fallen into the hands of the second oracle. Jin Yunlai suddenly remembered what Xu Jing had said before. The gate of heaven had already opened. Logically speaking, the first oracle should have come out. He pondered for a long time before turning around and leaving. At this moment, Chu Luiyue passed through the barrier and came inside. She stood still and looked forward. She was stunned. In front of her was a steep and tall mountain. However, there was not a single blade of grass on this mountain. It was just a charred and bare area. It looked as if it had just experienced a big fire. Even the area at the foot of the mountain was barren. There was no sign of life. Standing here and looking at this scene, she seemed to be able to smell the faint burning smell in the air. However, when she looked carefully, she found that many of the stones on the mountain had been polished with traces of vicissitudes. Even if something had really happened here, it did not seem to have happened recently. She suddenly thought of something and looked back. The magnificent Illusory God Palace was right behind her. However, there was a translucent barrier falling from the sky, separating the Illusory God Palace and this place. It was as if they were two different worlds. In an instant, she understood something. This so-called Fengming Mountain was actually the back mountain of the Illusory God Palace. The rumors that she had heard before suddenly appeared in her mind. That's right. Xiao Ran once said that tens of thousands of years ago, the Illusory God Palace had experienced a big fire that almost burned half of the palace. The current Illusory God Palace took 1,000 years to repair with great difficulty. It was also at that time that the crimson gold celestial phoenix, the guardian beast of the palace, defected from the Illusory God Palace. Since then, it implicated the entire clan and became sinners. Could it be that this Fengming Mountain was also? It seems that you are quite interested in the Illusory God Palace. A gentle and young voice suddenly came. Chu Luiyue looked back vigilantly and saw a person coming from the scorched Fengming Mountain. His speed was very fast. In a few breaths, he arrived in front of Chu Luiyue. When he arrived, there was not even the slightest fluctuation of energy around him. Chu Liuyue's heart trembled. This person's strength was definitely above the god realm. She quickly sized up the man in front of her. He looked to be in his 20s, handsome and gentle. It was really hard to imagine that he was the second divine envoy who controlled the life and death of countless people. At this time, Yu Qian was also looking at her. A faint wave of emotion flashed through his eyes. Greetings, second divine envoy. Chu Liyue bowed her head respectfully and politely. Yu Qian came back to his senses and slowly smiled. I asked you to come here today because I have something to tell you. He raised his finger and pointed at the Fengming mountain behind him. Do you know where this place is? Chu Liyue was startled. Wasn't this the Fengming mountain? Where else could it be? As if seeing through her thoughts, Yu Qian smiled and said, That's right. In the past, the guardian beast of the Divine Master, the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix, was raised here. Chapter 2273. Divine Master. Chu Liuyue's pupils suddenly shrank. Almost instantly, she understood that the Divine Master, that Yu Qian mentioned, must be the true master of the palace of the illusory god. So, the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix ancestor was not only the guardian beast of the palace, but also the Divine Master personally took care of it. To be able to leave the back mountain of the palace of the illusory god to it, it was enough to show the trust and love that the Divine Master had for it. But she didn't know what happened later that caused the Divine Master to betray and even directly burn down the palace of the illusory god. As it was related to the heavy secrets of the past, Chu Liyue tactfully didn't answer. Yu Qian put one hand behind his back, slightly raised his head, looked at Fengming Shan, and sighed softly. The Divine Master treated Yi Ling very well, but unfortunately, it let the Divine Master down. Chu Liyue slightly pursed her lips. Yi Ling. This should be the name of the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix ancestor. Hearing Yu Qian's words, it seemed that everything was as the rumors said back then. But who knew what the truth was? Yu Qian chuckled when he saw that she had remained silent. You don't have to be nervous. I didn't mean anything by saying this. I just felt emotional when I saw you. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Me? What was so good about her that made him feel emotional? She wasn't naive enough to think that Yu Qian, the second divine envoy of the palace of the illusory god, was really just emotional when he mentioned the past in front of her. Such a person's scheming methods were top-notch. Even if it was a sigh, a look, it was usually full of deep meaning. If it wasn't for another purpose, he wouldn't have let her come, let alone mention these things to someone like her who didn't even have a bloodline totem. Yu Qian nodded and said, Yes. Didn't you contract with the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan? His expression and eyes were clearly very gentle, as if he was chatting casually with a close friend. However, Chu Liyue clearly sensed an extremely dangerous icy aura, which instantly enveloped her. Her entire body tensed up. She looked up and fixed her gaze on Yu Qian. She felt a chill run down her spine. At this moment, even the air seemed to freeze. After a while, Chu Liyue gently nodded. Yes. I contracted a Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix and it has been with me for many years. Why did the second messenger suddenly ask about this? Yu Qian revealed a satisfied expression. He always liked to deal with honest people. He laughed. That's no ordinary Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. You have to know that in the past 10,000 years, the entire Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan has only produced two people with the purest bloodline. One is Yi Ling, and the other is the one you contracted. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Actually, I invited you here today to tell you something. I hope you can break the contract with that Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. Yu Qian's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. Chu Luiyue noticed that he didn't have any intention of compromising in his words. The corners of her lips curled up slightly as she asked with a faint smile. Second messenger, can I say no? Yu Qian's expression was gentle. I'm afraid not. Chu Luiyue shut her mouth. She knew that the other party's attitude was firm. It was useless to continue talking. The other party was the second messenger. His status and strength were much higher than hers. She didn't seem to have any conditions to negotiate with the other party. After a long while, Chu Luiyue asked. Second messenger, what if I don't agree? Yu Qian said. That's a pity. I heard that Taizu of yours has a chance of breaking through to become a refining saint. And those subordinates are also quite talented. By the way, it seems that you brought your husband with you this time. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned completely cold. Master, the seventh messenger has asked the princess to leave. Yan Qing walked into the room and saw Rong Xiu sitting by the window. There was a chess set in front of him. He was holding a black chess piece between his slender fingers. He seemed to be hesitating where to put it. When he heard Yan Qing's words, he didn't even raise his head. He only said, yes. Yan Qing frowned slightly. After a moment of hesitation, she said. I'm afraid that the second messenger is the one who wants to see the princess. I know. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows as he spoke. Then he raised his head and looked out of the window. He has always been calm. It's rare for him to lose his composure. It seems that the situation is not good. Yan Qing was even more worried. Master, with his character, once he is forced into a corner, I'm afraid that he will do anything. When that time comes, the princess will be in even more danger. Of course he will be anxious. The gate of heaven has been open for nearly 2 months. There is not much time left for him. Rong Xiu said lightly. Pa, the black chess piece was placed, instantly killing the white chess piece's last chance of survival. If he wants to hit the wall, let him go. There is no need to stop him. Yan Qing was shocked. Then she suddenly realized something and nodded slightly. Yes. Fengming Mountain. Hearing Chu Luiyue's answer, Yu Qian was not angry. Instead, he smiled slightly. After all, it is an ancient divine beast with a pure bloodline. It is normal that you are not willing to part with it. If it were me, I would not make this decision easily. How about this? I will use a condition to make an exchange with you. What do you want? Just say it. If it were others, they would probably think that Yu Qian was easy to talk to. But Chu Luiyue did not think so. This made her even more vigilant. In comparison, Yu Qian had the absolute right to speak in front of her. Even if she did not agree, could Yu Qian not do anything to her? But when he heard her refusal, not only did he not force her, he even took a step back. This matter itself was full of strangeness. Seeing that Chu Luiyue did not speak for a long time, Yu Qian said again, I see that you seem to be very interested in the palace of the illusory god. If you want to come in, just nod your head. And I can guarantee that you will be treated well in the palace of the illusory god in the future. Chu Luiyue smiled. The second divine envoy is right. I do want to enter the palace of the illusory god. However, as long as I finish the star path, I can achieve this goal. Why should I use dumpling to exchange? Yu Qian suddenly laughed, as if he had heard a joke. Sheng Guanyu, even if you break all the Xian formations on the star path, it is useless. Because you don't have a bloodline totem, the door of the palace of the illusory god will never open for you. Chu Luiyue did not say anything. However, if you are willing to break the contract with that crimson gold sky phoenix, I can let you have a bloodline totem. In this way, you can enter the palace of the illusory god and even become a god in the future. Why not? Chu Luiyue was shocked. Yu Qian's words meant, I heard that Mu Yafeng offended you before. Her bloodline power is not bad. If you don't mind, you can choose her. Of course, if you don't like her, there are many other choices in the palace of the illusory god. Yu Qian took a step forward and looked down at her with a smile on his lips. As long as you agree to my conditions, all of this will be within your reach. Chapter 2275. If it was anyone else who spoke to Yu Qian like this, they might have already been beheaded. But Dumpling was different. Yu Qian wasn't angry when he heard this. Instead, he was curious. He sized up Dumpling for a while, and his eyes were filled with unconcealable admiration. She's not even an adult yet, but she can already take human form. She really has a pure bloodline. Previously, he had only heard about it, but now that he saw it with his own eyes, he knew how heaven-defying this crimson gold heavenly phoenix was. No wonder Yi Zhao didn't hesitate to freeze and seal the divine phoenix mountain, causing all the clansmen to fall into a deep sleep and refuse to hand her over. You're Dumpling. The impatience and frustration in Yu Qian's heart dissipated. His voice was even gentler and more polite than when he was talking to Chu Luiyue. Dumpling hugged Chu Luiyue's neck tightly and was extremely vigilant. You're not allowed to call my name. Chu Luiyue patted her back lightly and wiped away the tears hanging at the corner of her eyes as she coaxed her. Dumpling, don't cry. You won't abandon you. Dumpling pursed her lips as if she was about to cry again, but she held it in and nodded vigorously. Yes. I want to be with you. Looking at the scene in front of him, Yu Qian frowned slightly. According to his previous plan, after letting Chu Luiyue and Dumpling break the contract, he would completely cut off all contact between the two. But now, it seemed that he was facing a lot of pressure. Chu Luiyue was fine, but the key was Dumpling. She was still young and only had Chu Luiyue in her eyes. If he forcefully snatched her away, he was afraid that she would really do something ruthless. Absolutely not. A crimson gold heavenly phoenix with a pure bloodline was extremely rare. He had waited for so many years for this one. No matter what, there couldn't be any problems. After hesitating for a long time, he finally said, since you guys are so insistent, then, we'll each take a step back. From now on, you can come here once a month. Second messenger, I said at any time. Chu Luiyue emphasized. Yu Qian paused. Half a month. Chu Luiyue smiled. Second divine envoy, you are so insincere. It is very difficult for me to agree to your request. Yu Qian gritted his teeth. It was rare for him to lose control like this, but the woman in front of him was really, the two sides were in a deadlock for a long time. Finally, Yu Qian said, good. I promise you. In any case, Fengming Mountain was surrounded by a barrier, and there weren't many people here. If she wanted to come, she could just come. What could she possibly do? However, I have to warn you in advance. Phoenix Cry Mountain was a holy land for cultivation for crimson gold heavenly phoenixes. However, this was not the case for the human race. If you insist on coming, I won't stop you as long as you can handle it. Yu Qian said in a deep voice. The corner of Chu Luiyue's lips curled up. You don't have to worry about that. Yu Qian looked at her deeply. However, she had already looked at Dumpling in her arms and comforted her softly. Dumpling, don't be afraid. Just treat it as a change of place to cultivate. In any case, I will often come over to accompany you. Bean-sized crystal tears rolled down from Dumpling's eyes again. Her small body was sobbing, but she didn't say anything else. She only nodded her head while choking with sobs. All right. She knew that this was the best choice for the current situation. Chu Luiyue kissed the space between her eyebrows with heartache. Dumpling, be good. Seeing this, the Yuqian didn't say anything else. With a wave of his sleeve, a palm-sized white jade token flew out. This is my token. If you want to come to Fengming Mountain in the future, you can use this. Chu Luiyue caught the white jade token. Thank you, second messenger. No need. Yu Qian raised his chin. Now, you can cancel the contract. Hearing this, Dumpling instantly hugged Chu Luiyue even tighter. Chu Luiyue coaxed her for a while more before Dumpling reluctantly let go and stood in front of her. The two of them faced each other. Chu Luiyue looked deeply at Dumpling, then closed his eyes. She gently raised her hand, and a scarlet gold light suddenly flew out from her palm, heading straight for Dumpling. Dumpling's small shoulders trembled, and she also stretched out her hand with red eyes. The same ray of light flew out from her hand. The two rays of light converged and connected in midair, and the pressure was faintly discernible. Yu Qian watched from the side, his eyes moving slightly. The aura of the purest bloodline was indeed different. Even Yi Zhao, who had opened his seventh meridian, could not be compared to it. Although he had been checkmated by Chu Luiyue, it was all worth it. Bang! A faint shattering sound was heard. The two rays of light that were connected to each other were also annihilated. Yu Qian's heart settled. In this way, the contract between Chu Luiyue and Dumpling was completely cancelled. He lifted his leg and walked forward. Dumpling, follow me. As he spoke, he had already reached out his hand. However, at this moment, his expression suddenly froze. A rune gradually flashed between Dumpling's brows. Immediately after, a familiar aura came from her body. When he saw this, Yu Qian's brows furrowed tightly. He quickly turned around and looked at Chu Luiyue. His gaze was cold and sharp like a knife. When it landed on a person's body, it was almost bone-piercing. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately looked up. Their gazes met, and in an instant, sparks seemed to fly in all directions. Yu Qian's gaze was solid, and it carried a powerful pressure that crushed over. He asked word by word, Shangguanyu, is your contract really cancelled? Chu Luiyue's heart instantly tightened. Digression, 6 p.m. Chapter 2276. After a short moment of silence, she said, of course. She and Dumpling didn't have an ordinary contract to begin with. Now that she said it was cancelled, it was just to save some face. Could the Yu Qian really see something? Then what's with the aura in her body? The Yu Qian's eyes were full of scrutinizing pressure as he stared at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. Just as he was about to ask, Dumpling asked crisply, hey, are you talking about this? The Yu Qian turned around and saw Dumpling pointing at the gradually fading totem between her eyebrows and asked. That's right. The Yu Qian replied affirmatively, but his eyes were still full of suspicion. If the contract between the two of you has really been cancelled, why is there still this aura left? This is clearly a special power that the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix has after contracting with a human. Although ordinary Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenixes inherited a certain amount of bloodline power, they wouldn't have such an aura. But Dumpling had it at this moment. Hearing this answer, Chu Luiyue and Dumpling quickly looked at each other and exchanged glances. His explanation was very interesting. Since this aura was only produced when the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix contracted with a human, how did he know? Seeing how confident he was, he must have seen it before. Then, there was only one explanation. The ancestor of the Crimson Gold Celestial Phoenix, Yi Ling, had a contract with the God Master of the Palace of the Illusory God. So now, he began to suspect Dumpling. Understanding this point, Chu Luiyue looked at Dumpling and blinked gently. Dumpling's heart lit up, and she immediately took out a crimson gold feather. I think it should be because of the ancestor's golden feather, right? Seeing Dumpling take out the ancestor's golden feather, a trace of shock flashed across the Yuqian's face. Why do you have this? Of course it's because I'm the young master. Dumpling rolled her eyes and carefully put away the ancestor's golden feather. If it's not with me, do you think it's with you? She hated Yuqian to the core, so she didn't hold back when she spoke. However, Yuqian didn't have the time to care about this. He frowned doubtfully and looked at Dumpling. The aura he had sensed earlier was indeed the same as the aura on the ancestor's golden feather. Could it be that? I was wrong. After all, Dumpling had the purest bloodline, so it was reasonable for her to obtain the ancestor's golden feather. Back then, he had asked Yi Zhao for it, but he didn't manage to get it. It turned out that she was with Dumpling. Tuanzi's big eyes and the tip of her nose were still red. She sniffled and continued to complain. You've already separated me from Yu. What other contract can I have? His words were still filled with anger and dissatisfaction. Yuqian gradually dispelled the doubts in his heart, and his expression eased. That's for the best. You have the purest bloodline. That kind of contract will only hinder your breakthrough. As he said that, he raised his chin. Let's go back to Fengming Mountain. After that, you'll be staying here most of the time. Dumpling looked at Chu Luiyue eagerly. I want you to go with me. Yuqian paused. He wanted to directly refuse, but seeing that Dumpling was still agitated, he finally nodded and snorted. All right. As long as she can go up, I won't stop her. With that, he tapped the tip of his foot and took the lead to rush towards Fengming Mountain. On the other hand, Tuanzi turned around, ran over, and hugged Chu Luiyue's leg with its shiny little feet. You, come with me. Chu Luiyue bent down and picked her up. All right. In any case, she would come here many times in the future. She would first go and take a look at the situation on Fengming Mountain. Dumpling hugged her and snuggled into her embrace, her face full of reluctance. Chu Luiyue patted her back and rushed towards Yuqian. Very quickly, Chu Luiyue understood why Yuqian said those words. On Fengming Mountain, there was an extremely powerful pressure. She had only gotten a little closer when she felt as if her chest was being pressed down by something. She felt stuffy and her speed also decreased. A transparent heat wave swept over from the mountain. It was scorching hot. Chu Luiyue's forehead was quickly covered in sweat. His back was also quickly drenched in sweat, and then quickly evaporated. Yuqian turned around to look. Seeing her reaction, he sneered in his heart. The fire that year on Fengming Mountain had directly burned down the entire back mountain. Even though so many years had passed, every inch of land and every piece of rock still retained traces of what had happened back then. Back then, Yi Ling's 9 meridians had all been opened, and his strength was unparalleled. Even though he had been dead for many years, his power was still there. Even he didn't come here often. Not to mention a god like Chu Luiyue. About 15 minutes later, Yuqian arrived at the peak of Fengming Mountain. He stood with his hands behind his back and waited for another 15 minutes before Chu Luiyue and Dumpling finally arrived. The moment her feet landed on the mountain, Chu Luiyue's eyebrows twitched, and she summoned her divine body almost immediately. A layer of beautiful soft armor quickly covered her body. With the divine body as a barrier, the burning sensation was finally reduced by a lot. Are you alright? Dumpling asked worriedly. Chu Luiyue shook her head. I'm fine. Because she was worried that she would reveal something in front of Yuqian, she had stopped borrowing Dumpling's power from just now. That was why it took her a lot of effort to come here. However, as long as she could hide it from Yuqian, it was all worth it. Dumpling jumped down from her arms. She was barefooted, and her small, white feet stepped on the scorched mountain rocks. Not only did she not look like she was in pain, but she even widened her eyes slightly as she tugged at the corner of Chu Liuyue's shirt and muttered, "I'm sorry." "Aw you, it's so comfortable here." Chu Liuyue felt relieved. It was fine as long as Dumpling was fine. Yu Qian chuckled at the side. The rocks on the back mountain were specially gathered by the Divine Master for Yiling back then. Not only can they nourish his body, but they can also increase his cultivation speed. Naturally, other places can't compare to them. If it were an ordinary crimson gold heavenly phoenix, they wouldn't be able to withstand it here. However, Dumpling has the purest bloodline, so she won't have this problem. This was why he had to choose this place to meet Chu Liuyue. Fengming Mountain was originally prepared for Dumpling. Hearing his words, Dumpling curled her lips. No matter how good the place is, it has already been burned down. What's there to cherish? She still liked to be with Yu. Yi Zhao knew that she was extremely dependent on Chu Liuyue and couldn't change it in a short time, so he didn't pay much attention to it. In any case, Chu Liuyue wouldn't come often in the future. As time passed, the relationship between Dumpling and her would naturally fade. "Dumpling, you can cultivate here in the future." Yu Qian's lips curled up. "With your talent, it won't be long before you open your 7th meridian. In the future, it won't even be a problem for you to open your 9th meridian." Chapter 2277. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. The Yu Qian's words, it was as if he really hoped that Dumpling could open her meridians as soon as possible. This was the same as the owner of the eye from before. That person was obviously not the Yu Qian, but there must be some unknown relationship between the two. Otherwise, that I wouldn't have been able to summon the illusory god palace back in the Red Moon Desert. Even if it was just an illusion, it was enough to explain the problem. They wanted Dumpling to open her meridians, and even hoped that she would open her 9th meridian. Back then, Yiling had opened all 9 meridians, but didn't he betray the illusory god palace? After that, the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan was directly labeled as a sinful clan. Even Yi Zhao was captured and tortured. But Yu Qian's current attitude towards Dumpling was truly suspicious. Dumpling ignored Yu Qian. "Ah Yu, can you accompany me to take a look around?" Chu Liuyue rubbed her head. "All right." With that, the two of them walked to the side. Fengming Mountain was steep and towering. Although the top of the mountain was bare, it still contained an extremely shocking amount of power. To Dumpling, it was indeed the best place to cultivate. Walking on the charred mountain rocks, Chu Liuyue's emotions churned as countless thoughts flashed through his mind. All of a sudden, Tuanzi pulled her hand and said, "Ah Yu, it's so quiet here. I don't like it." At first, she did feel that this place was very suitable for cultivation, but after staying here for a long time, she felt that this place was too deserted. In the future, when Yu wasn't around, wouldn't it be boring for her to be alone? Without waiting for Chu Liuyue to speak, Yu Qian took the initiative and said, "If you want to be more lively, the illusory god palace also has a lot of divine beasts. I can get them to accompany you." Chu Liuyue frowned slightly. "Second divine envoy, this Fengming Mountain. I'm afraid ordinary divine beasts won't be able to stay here, right?" Yu Qian said softly, "It doesn't matter, as long as Dumpling likes it." Dumpling glared at him. "I don't like it. Wouldn't it be terrible if those magical beasts all died after coming here?" Chu Liuyue pinched Dumpling's little face. Dumpling is not angry. There is no sign of life here. It is indeed a bit desolate. How about this? I will leave the 2 Tian baby to you. Dumpling was stunned. Really? Chu Liuyue nodded and took out a 2 Tian baby. He bent down and placed it in Dumpling's chubby little hand. The heaven and earth energy here is abundant. It's just right for me to raise it. Dumpling blinked and nodded vigorously. Good. In the future, you should come often too. After getting Chu Liuyue's affirmative answer, Dumpling ran to the side, picked up a stone, and threw it at the ground. Bang! A hole suddenly appeared on the mountain rock. Yu Qian's eyebrows twitched. Fengming Mountain was extremely difficult to shake. Tens of thousands of years of wind and rain had not left many traces on it. Dumpling just casually threw a stone, and it actually, Dumpling buried the two Tian baby, revealing only the two tender leaves at the top, gently swaying in the wind. That's good. Dumpling clapped her hands in satisfaction. She heard that two Tian baby could grow up, so it was very suitable to raise it here. Yu Qian glanced at the two Tian baby, but didn't care too much about it. It was just a small toy for Dumpling to relieve her boredom. Chu Liyue wiped the sweat on her forehead that was still dripping down. Dumpling, I will go back first today. I will come to see you tomorrow. Hearing that, Tuanzi ran over and hugged her reluctantly. Then you must come tomorrow. Chu Liyue smiled lightly. Yes. Then, she took a deep breath and said goodbye to Yu Qian. Yu Qian was naturally happy about her departure. He didn't try to persuade her to stay and directly agreed. However, perhaps it was because Chu Liyue was still cooperative with Dumpling's matter, or because Dumpling was still here, Yu Qian's attitude was still considered polite. After giving a few more instructions to Dumpling, Chu Liyue left. After her figure disappeared into the distance, Yu Qian looked at Dumpling. Dumpling turned her back and sat down in front of the two Tian baby. Her entire body was filled with disgust for him. Yu Qian didn't mind. As long as she could open her meridians as soon as possible, nothing else mattered. Yu Qian also left quickly. Dumpling was the only one left in the huge Fengming Mountain. Her cheeks puffed up in anger as she wiped away the tears hanging from the corner of her eyes and snorted softly. Acting was really not easy. When he got back, he would ask Yu for double the kisses. After Chu Liyue came out of the barrier, she went straight to her residence. When she returned to the courtyard, it was already very late. Just as she arrived at the door, it opened from the inside. Rong Xiao was standing behind the door. There was a faint smile on his elegant face. You're back. In an instant, Chu Liyue's tense mind finally relaxed, and a strong sense of fatigue quickly surged up. During this period of time, she had experienced too many things. Previously, the string in her mind had always been taut, but now that she saw Rong Xiao, she finally let go of her guard. She took a step forward and threw herself into Rong Xiao's arms. Leaning against his firm and warm chest, she could even hear the powerful beating of his heart. A familiar cold fragrance wrapped around her. She took a deep breath and hugged his lean waist tightly with both arms. She leaned her head against his chest and rubbed against it. Rong Xiao's heart instantly softened. He wrapped his arms around her shoulders and pulled her into his embrace. Rong Xiao, she muttered softly. In an instant, a cold light flashed across his eyes as he asked softly, "Who bullied my Yu?" Chapter 2278. Chu Liyue shook her head. It's fine, it's just that Dumpling was left at Fengming Mountain. Even though she had used all sorts of methods to deceive Yu Qian, she still worried about Dumpling when she thought about how she would be alone for a long time. Rong Xiao kissed her forehead. Let's talk inside. On the other side, Jin Yunlai returned to the illusory god palace after sending Chu Liyue to Fengming Mountain. When he passed by the Black Jade Square, his footsteps paused. Two people were standing not far from the square, whispering something. He knew the man on the left, Kong Qinglin. He was the only refining saint that had appeared in the illusory god palace in recent years. He had just broken through and entered the illusory god palace not long ago. It wasn't strange that he would appear here. But the woman next to him, she was wearing a long dress with an exquisite forehead band. Her black hair fell to her ankles. She had a slender figure and a gentle face. Jin Yunlai didn't have any impression of her. There was no such person in the illusory god palace. So, if I want to become a refining saint, I have to fight for a ray of holy light from here? She asked softly. She was gentle and gentle, making people feel like they were bathed in a spring breeze. Kong Qinglin nodded. That's right. This piece of primal chaos holy jade has appeared here tens of thousands of years ago. It can be considered the most precious treasure of the illusory god palace. It contains thousands of holy lights and has boundless power. As long as you can successfully summon a ray of holy light, you can successfully refine a saint artifact. As he spoke, he looked at Suli curiously. Speaking of which, I haven't asked yet. You said that you just came up from the divine ruins world, but when you came, you were already a refining saint. What's going on? The holy light in it won't leave the illusory god palace. In other words, it was impossible for a refining saint to appear in the divine ruins world below. Hearing Kong Qinglin's words, Jin Yunlai immediately understood. It turned out that this was the refining saint that Chu Luiyue wanted to invite. He leaned to the side and listened attentively. In fact, he also wanted to know what was going on. Suli smiled faintly and explained, actually, I didn't break through just now. About 10,000 years ago, I was refining a weapon when a strange phenomenon occurred in the sky. A shield flew down. I don't know how, but I managed to successfully forge a saint artifact. Shield. Kong Qinglin was stunned. Yes. It's. Suli raised her hand and pointed forward. Its shape seems to be similar to the missing piece in the middle. Kong Qinglin immediately understood. I see, Suli sighed softly. Unfortunately, the power contained in the shield was too shocking. After I finished refining the saint artifact, I also died, leaving behind only a remnant of my soul. It wasn't easy for me to revive. Only when I came here did I realize that the shield actually flew out from the illusory god palace. The corners of her lips curved slightly as she spoke softly. I don't know how this happened. Kong Qinglin's lips moved as if he wanted to say something. 10,000 years ago, it was probably because of that riot. But this matter was forbidden in the illusory god palace, so he naturally couldn't say it. Suli glanced at him, her eyes flashing slightly as she smiled and said, Right, I heard that there hasn't been a refining saint in the illusory god palace for many years. It's really amazing that you were able to succeed. Hearing this, Kong Qinglin stroked his beard and laughed. Not at all. Compared to you, Suli, I'm still a bit lacking. Although he said that, it was clear that Kong Qinglin acknowledged and was proud of this matter. Of course, he had the qualifications to do so. Suli asked curiously, actually, I don't understand. Logically speaking, in a place like the illusory god palace where geniuses and experts gather, there should be many who can break through to the refining saint realm. Why is it that you're the only one in all these years? Kong Qinglin subconsciously said, naturally, it's because of this primal chaos sacred jade. His voice suddenly stopped. Suli had already guessed something. Because of that missing piece. Kong Qinglin looked at Suli with some hesitation, then nodded and said in a low voice, Everyone in the illusory god palace has a tacit understanding of this matter, and very few people have mentioned it in these years. It's only because you're new and have a connection with that piece of chaos black jade that I'm telling you. But it's better not to mention it in the future. Suli was about to ask again when she suddenly heard footsteps behind her. The two turned around at the same time. Seeing who it was, Kong Qinglin was startled and quickly bowed. "Greetings, seventh divine emissary." Su Li was startled. So the person in front of her was the seventh divine emissary. This name was like a thunderclap reverberating in the ears. She originally thought that she would see him when she came to the heavenly gate, but for some reason, the seventh divine emissary didn't appear that day. Today was the first time she officially met this person. Su Li greets the seventh divine emissary. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind, but Su Li's face was still calm and gentle as usual. Jin Yunlai looked at her coldly. To be able to become a refining saint in the divine ruins world, you do have some ability. However, this is the illusory god palace. If you want to stay here in the future, you'd better be careful with your words and actions. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask, understand? Was this a warning to her not to continue inquiring about what happened in the past? Su Li's mind raced, but her face revealed a bit of nervousness and she slightly lowered her head. Yes. Kong Qinglane's heart also hung in the air. Of course, he knew that those words couldn't be said carelessly, but seeing that Su Li was really curious, he couldn't hold back and said it. Who knew that the seventh divine emissary was here? He must have heard everything. However, just as Kong Qinglin was nervous and worried, thinking that he was going to be punished, Jin Yunlai didn't say anything more and turned to leave. Hearing the footsteps gradually fade away, Su Li gently sighed and muttered softly. It seems that in this illusory god palace, I really have to be careful everywhere. Kong Qinglin's back was already soaked with sweat. A gentle breeze blew, and a chill went straight to the top of his head. Thank goodness, he wiped the sweat from his forehead with lingering fear. Su Li, don't talk about these things in the future. The seventh divine emissary probably saw that it was your first mistake today, so he let you off. If you do it again in the future, it won't be so easy. Su Li looked at his reaction thoughtfully. Is the seventh divine emissary very strict? He had only said a few words, but Kong Qinglin was already so nervous. Kong Qinglin smiled bitterly. Not at all the divine emissaries are like this. After all, it's related to the past, forget it. Don't mention it in the future to avoid causing trouble for yourself. Su Li blinked her eyes and smiled gently. Okay. On the other side, Jin Yunlai wanted to go back to his residence directly, but halfway there, he suddenly remembered what happened today. He turned around and walked in another direction. Chapter 2279. He walked forward and finally arrived at the door of a courtyard. The courtyard was quiet, and there was no sound at all. Looking in from the outside, one could see a thick pile of fallen leaves in the courtyard. It was as if no one had lived here for many years, and it was lonely and cold. Jin Yunlai raised his hand and knocked on the door. Knock knock. First Oracle, Yunlai requests an audience. He spoke loudly. However, after waiting for a while, there was no response from inside. Jin Yunlai frowned slightly and increased the strength of his hand. Knock knock. First Oracle, I have something important to report to you. Still, there was silence. Jin Yunlai waited for a while, and his eyes flashed with determination. Then, he took a step forward and was about to push the door open and enter. However, at this moment, an extremely powerful aura suddenly came from inside. Jin Yunlai was shocked and immediately retreated without thinking. However, he was fast, but the other party's attack was faster. Bang! He could not dodge in time and was hit in the chest by the force, and he fell heavily to the ground. Pfft! Jin Yunlai's chest shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He clutched his chest and stared at the door in shock. First Oracle, Jin Yunlai, you're too presumptuous. A cold voice came out from inside. It was like a fierce wind and frost that instantly caused Jin Yunlai to freeze on the spot. He forcefully swallowed the strong taste of blood and endured the pain in his body. He quickly got up and bowed respectfully. Yunlai did not mean to offend you. Please forgive me, First Oracle. His heart almost stopped beating at this moment, and the blood in his body instantly froze. The First Oracle's position in the palace of the illusory god was extremely respected. Not to mention the others, even the remaining divine envoys had no choice but to wait obediently. Now, he had tried to barge in, which was a serious crime. After a while, the voice continued to come from inside. Do you know who you are suspecting? Jin Yunlai was shocked and immediately knelt on one knee. Yunlai knows his mistake. Bang! His knee landed heavily on the ground, making people's scalps go numb. This time, it almost made people think that his knees were going to shatter because of this. The courtyard fell into silence once more. Jin Yunlai's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something, and she didn't dare to breathe. An extreme sense of unease welled up in his heart. He rarely felt this way. But now, he was facing the first divine envoy. The reason why he did what he did just now was because he was suspicious of the First Oracle. For so many years, the first divine emissary had never stepped out of the courtyard. Xu Jing and the others had repeatedly requested to see him, but he had never agreed. Until now, even the authority of Fengming Mountain had been completely handed over to the second divine envoy. Jin Yunlai did not understand. Why did the First Oracle give him all his authority? Why did he stay in this small courtyard and refuse to come out? He could not help doubting it. Therefore, the reason why he took the risk earlier was to test the waters. What was certain was that the first divine envoy was indeed inside. And his strength seemed to have improved compared to before. Just now, if he wanted to, Jin Yunlai's life and death would be in his hands. There won't be a next time. After a long time, the voice finally sounded again. Jin Yunlai let out a long sigh of relief. Thank you, First Divine Envoy. He bowed respectfully and slowly got up. Yunlai will take his leave. There was no response from inside. Jin Yunlai turned around and left. However, just as he took a step, he suddenly paused. After hesitating for a while, he finally turned around and looked at the tightly shut courtyard door. First Divine Envoy, are you really at ease to entrust Fengming Mountain to the second Divine Envoy? He invited Sheng Wanyu over today. After a pause, he said again, if everything goes smoothly, the young master of the Crimson Gold Sky Phoenix clan will stay in Fengming Mountain from now on. He has his reasons for doing so. The voice was calm, as if he didn't care too much. Since he's in charge of Fengming Mountain now, he can naturally make the decision. If you have any objections, you can directly talk to him. There's no need to come here. But, Jin Yunlai wanted to say something but hesitated. But these should be the matters of the first divine envoy. He knew what these things meant, but he didn't seem to have any intention of making a move. Could it be that this was his intention all along? Jin Yunlai couldn't figure it out. No matter what, he couldn't go to the second divine envoy. After so long, he knew very well what kind of person the Yu Qian was. He usually seemed gentle, but in reality, he was extremely strong. If anyone dared to oppose his decision, he would definitely be dissatisfied. Only the first divine envoy could restrain him a little, but now the first divine envoy didn't seem to have any intention of interfering. What had the first divine envoy been busy with all these years? If it was in the past, he would definitely not let the Yu Qian do as he pleased. But it seemed that the first divine envoy wouldn't see him today. Jin Yunlai clenched his fists and stood there for a long time before finally bowing slightly. Yunlai understands. After saying that, he finally left. After he left, the courtyard once again fell into silence. A wind blew, sweeping up the broken leaves in the courtyard, revealing a murderous aura. Suddenly, something seemed to be moving under the pile of leaves. That voice came again. I know you want to go to Foaming Mountain, but now is not the time. The commotion under the pile of leaves finally died down. Jin Yunlai raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His expression had returned to normal. Although what he did just now was dangerous, he didn't regret it. At the very least, it dispelled the doubts in his heart. Although he still didn't know what the first divine envoy was planning, he could finally feel at ease. If he didn't want to see him, then so be it. Thinking of this, his hanging heart could be considered to have settled down. Suddenly, a figure hurriedly walked past him. Jin Yunlai was suddenly stunned. Xu Jing. Shouldn't she be at Herb Mountain at this time? What was she doing in such a hurry? Jin Yunlai looked in her direction and frowned slightly. Sixth Divine Envoy. She arrived in front of a courtyard and pushed open the door with ease. Then, she went straight into the room. As soon as she entered, a faint smell of blood assaulted her nose. She frowned slightly and immediately turned around to close the door. The doors and windows of the room were tightly shut, and it was very dark. Coupled with the smell, it was even more uncomfortable. Although she had been here several times, she was still not used to it. Xu Jing calmed herself down and bowed in the direction of the screen. Sixth Divine Envoy, I'm here. A moment later, a hoarse voice sounded. Put everything down. Yes. Xu Jing responded, took out a jade box, and placed it on the table next to her. Chapter 2280. There was a hint of displeasure in that coarse and hoarse voice. Only one. Xu Jing said, after all, this is a medicine at the level of a medical sage. It's extremely difficult to refine. The man chuckled. But it's been many years since you became a medical sage. I can only say that your skills haven't improved much over the years. Xu Jing's expression stiffened for a moment, and a cold look flashed across her eyes. No one liked being said such things, let alone Xu Jing. It's extremely difficult to improve after becoming a medical sage. You can't say that. The person who was in charge of the Herb Mountain was much more efficient than you after becoming a medical sage. Xu Jing's expression turned completely cold. Sixth Divine Emissary, if you're not satisfied with me, you can find someone else to help you. She wanted to know who else in the illusory god palace could help her. That voice laughed softly. Why are you in such a hurry? Anyway, the Herb Mountain is already yours, and no one will fight with you for it. Then, a black rope flew out from behind the screen and took the jade box away. Xu Jing stood with her hands by her side and said coldly, how do you know? What's more, my authority over the Herb Mountain has been revoked. How can this Herb Mountain be considered mine? I heard about this, and it's indeed a bit sudden. But you can't completely blame others for this. Who told you not to restrain yourself before? If you weren't so anxious, you probably wouldn't have fallen to this state. Xu Jing didn't want to talk about this. Her mood was already bad enough, and she couldn't bear to hear other people's criticism. Sixth Divine Emissary, if you have the time and energy, you should think more about yourself. Xu Jing said coldly. Even with the help of my pill, it's still very difficult for you to reconstruct your divine body. The voice behind the screen was silent for a while. Of course I know that. Xu Jing's eyes flashed slightly, and she asked tentatively, actually, I haven't asked you before, but your injuries, what's going on? To be able to injure the sixth divine emissary to such an extent, it was obvious that the opponent wasn't an ordinary person. However, the sixth divine emissary did not seem to have any intention of telling her this. It's all in the past anyway. There's no point in telling you. Xu Jing was really curious, but she couldn't get anything out of the sixth oracle, so she could only change the topic. By the way, do you know what happened to the first oracle recently? The gate of heaven had been open for 2 months, but he had not stepped out of the gate even once. I went to ask for an audience, but I never received permission. The matters of the first divine envoy are not something you and I can interfere with. If you have the time, you should go back and think about how to improve your strength. Before Xu Jing could finish, the voice inside the room interrupted him in a hurry. He spoke very quickly and his tone was tense. It was very different from usual, as if it was filled with deep fear. Xu Jing frowned. Although the divine envoys were extremely respectful to the first divine envoy, it didn't seem to be to such an extent, right? Why did the sixth divine emissary change so much when he returned this time? She pursed her lips and took a step forward. Mo Shiqian, do you know something? That's how it is. In the room, Chu Luiyue briefly explained the matter to Rongxiu. That second divine envoy is very domineering. If I don't agree, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave Fengming Mountain today. Rongxiu nodded. Chu Luiyue continued, speaking of which, I've never heard of the first divine envoy. This matter involves the divine beast guarding the palace. I thought that the first divine envoy should be in charge. Sun Yi, who was walking to the door, stopped in his tracks. Digression, 6:00. Chapter 2281. However, this pause was only for a moment, and he quickly returned to normal and entered the room. Master, Your Highness. Seeing Sun Yi enter, Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Perhaps the first divine emissary is busy with other things. Rongxiu said indifferently. The second divine emissary's status is only second to him, so it's not strange for him to be personally in charge of this matter. I'm just curious. Chu Luiyue tapped her fingers on the armrest of the chair. They seem to want Dumpling to open her meridians as soon as possible. Previously in the Red Moon Desert, the owner of that eye clearly had the same thoughts. He even tried his best to capture Dumpling and forcefully open her meridians. This time, although the second divine emissary, Yu Qian, did not use such cruel methods, from a certain perspective, he still coerced her and Dumpling. Fortunately, the contract between her and Dumpling had already been changed. Otherwise, she really didn't know how to get through this. Chu Luiyue also had her own plans. There was another important reason why she was willing to go with the flow. If Dumpling could open her 7th meridian, there was hope of saving Yi Zhao. Although Fengming Mountain had been burned down, it was still a holy land for cultivation for the crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Especially Dumpling. She had the same pure bloodline as her ancestor and had the ancestor's golden feather in her hands. Obviously, staying at Fengming Mountain would greatly increase her cultivation speed. Lu Yu. At this moment, Mu Hongyu rushed in from outside. Lu Yu, you're back. Chu Luiyue collected her thoughts and looked up. Seeing Mu Hongyu's excited expression, she couldn't help but ask, Hongyu, what's wrong? Mu Hongyu ran over and saw Rongxiu and Sun Yi in the room. She coughed. I have something to tell you. Chu Luiyue nodded. Just say it. Rongxiu and Sun Yi were the people she trusted the most. Mu Hongyu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She walked closer and said softly, Lu Yu, there seems to be something wrong with the sea outside the illusory god palace. Chu Luiyue's heart stirred as he glanced at Sun Yi. Sun Yi nodded and walked over to close the door. He then raised his hand to set up a barrier, isolating all sounds. Chu Luiyue asked again. What did you find? Mu Hongyu's hands were twisted into a bowl. She was a little conflicted. I think Master might be under that sea. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered. How can you tell? Did you notice something? Mu Hongyu sighed and explained. Actually, when I came that day, I felt that the sea was a little strange, but I didn't take it to heart at that time. I've been thinking about it for the past few days and finally noticed something strange. Lu Yu, the spatial power under that sea is very complicated. It seems to be Master's work. Chu Luiyue was stunned. The reason why she guessed that Diwu Zhangze was imprisoned under that sea was because she heard a faint painful groan when she left last time. That voice was definitely Diwu Zhangze's. She couldn't have heard wrongly. When Mu Hongyu came to say that there was something wrong with that sea, she thought that she had encountered the same situation as her. She didn't expect, you can sense the changes in the spatial power below. Mu Hongyu nodded and gestured with her hands. That's right. Under normal circumstances, the spatial power above and below the sea should be about the same. But when we passed over the sea that day, I discovered that there seemed to be several forces intertwining with each other. It was extremely chaotic. Later on, when I thought about it, it was indeed a mark that Master deliberately left behind. Other than him, I don't know anyone else who can do such a thing. She furrowed her brows nervously. But this is only my guess. I have to go down and see for myself whether it's true or not. I just feel a little uneasy, so I came over to tell you. There's no need to guess. It should be true. Chu Luiyue softly interrupted her. Then, she briefly recounted what happened earlier. I was only suspecting it at first. But if even you say so, then this matter is most likely true. The room fell into a short dead silence. Mu Hongyu finally came back to her senses. But, who exactly did Master offend to be imprisoned under that sea? Anyone who had been to that sea knew what kind of shocking and ferocious power was hidden in the surging waves. Once a high god powerhouse fell into it, there would be nothing left of him in a few breaths' time. He wouldn't even have the time to struggle and ask for help. Even if Diwu Zhangze was stronger, he would definitely be tortured inhumanly if he was imprisoned in that place. Chu Luiyue didn't say anything. She had the same question in her mind. Not only Diwu Zhangze, but also Dugu Maobao and Lan Xiao. The three of them were first trapped in the Red Moon Desert and didn't see the light of day for tens of thousands of years. Then, they were brought here and imprisoned separately. It wasn't that she didn't have any guesses. Dugu Maobao and the other two must have some kind of relationship with the Illusory God Palace or the Illusory God Palace. Because of some reason, they were punished like this. But now that she didn't have any more clues or evidence, she naturally couldn't make any guesses. Mu Hongyu suddenly grabbed her hand and whispered, "Don't worry. Lu Yu, I want to go down to that sea to take a look." Chu Luiyue frowned. Now? Mu Hongyu nodded. But you're still a high god. If you go down rashly, I'm afraid, Master left a space under the sea. I can go there. Mu Hongyu said. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. Really? Mu Hongyu nodded. So, the only problem now is that it's a bit difficult to get out of the Heavenly Gate. The Heavenly Gate of the Illusory God Palace was heavily guarded. It was almost impossible to leave quietly. Chu Luiyue thought for a while and said, "It's not difficult to get out. The difficult part is, how to not be discovered. Since Diwu Zhangze was imprisoned there must be someone secretly watching over him." Rong Xiu suddenly said, "If your incorporeal body breaks through again, you'll be able to fool everyone." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.